Iliana was known as the noble daughter of the Bianteka Empire, a jewel of the realm. Descended from a founding family, her powerful father ensured she became the most admired flower of high society. But her life was not her own. It was a gilded cage built by her father, who even chose her husband with a single word. Her father, Dmitri, enters her room, his voice sharp as he questions the disgrace she is causing. He is Dmitri Rasana, Duke of the Rasana house, a man of imposing authority and little warmth. Startled, she addresses him as father, her voice trembling with apprehension. He reveals that her nanny has told him of her anxieties. He confronts her directly, asking if she fears her new husband might take a second wife. Through tears, Leah explains her fears, citing the many wives of Zakador's emperor and the 2 wives of its first prince as examples. Her father dismisses her worries as nonsense. He rages that her fiancé, a mere 7th prince, is just a handsome loafer with no real power and could never afford multiple wives. Horrified, she realizes the implication. A prince so far from the throne might be killed by the next emperor. A grim reality hangs in the air. Princes of Zakador who do not ascend the throne often meet an early demise. Her friends had gossiped about it, musing that even if he survived by supporting his brother, it was a precarious existence. She feels the dread of noblewomen in Zakador who marry into the imperial family, their lives a constant gamble. She sobs, begging her father not to send her to Zakador, her fear palpable. He dismisses her fears, assuring her that an imperial couple, a symbol of alliance, cannot be harmed and is protected by treaty. He admonishes her, reminding her of the life of freedom and luxury she has enjoyed solely because of her family name. With cold eyes, he demands she repay the debt she owes him for her privileged upbringing. At the wedding, guests murmur about her elegance, noting how fortunate the prince is to have such a wife. As she walks the aisle, her tears are likened to precious jewels, a beautiful mask for her deep sorrow. Her groom, Marcel Zakador, the 7th prince, introduces himself, claiming it was love at first sight. Though it was an unwanted marriage in a foreign land, a new chapter of her life began. Against her expectations, Iliana found herself drawn to her husband, who showered her with passionate affection. She lived a dreamlike honeymoon, falling deeply in love with him, innocent to the world's harshness. Her growth began only when her powerless husband was thrust into the fight for succession, after being adopted by the grieving empress. The political winds shifted, and suddenly, support began to gather for the 7th prince. One nobleman declares his unwavering support for the prince's ascent to the throne. Another follows suit, swayed by the trend and believing the prince, guided by his fairy of fortune, is destined to rule. Marcel's fame grew as he returned victorious from battles meant to kill him, and saved the empire from plague with a saint's help. Even the Pope of Nymphos gave his personal blessing, solidifying Marcel's righteous claim. Marcel humbly brushes off the praise, attributing his success to a series of miracles and luck, not his own greatness. But despite his modest words, his eyes held an unmistakable glint of ambition. He muses on his transformation from a despised prince to a respected one, now daring to dream of the title, Your Majesty. He confesses his ambition to Leah, promising to give her the world if she helps him become emperor. Now deeply in love, Iliana places his ambition above her own safety, assuring him his love is all she needs. She prays before a silent statue, resolved to help him achieve his desires, even at the cost of her own good fortune. The Rasana family poured its vast wealth into his cause, and Iliana sacrificed much to remain by his side. Through their combined efforts, Marcel overcame all hurdles and was crowned emperor. He promised that as a reward for her unwavering support, he would place the crown of empress upon her head. But in the end, her origin as a noble from the enemy empire, Bianteka, became a formidable obstacle. As Marcel's power grew, the fragile peace between Bianteka and Zakador shattered, leaving Iliana in a difficult position. The emperor's advisors are divided. One insists he must make Princess Bane the empress, while another protests in Iliana's favor. Whispers of betrayal reach Iliana's ears. The court cannot allow the tainted blood of Bianteka to mix with the imperial line. She had never desired the title of empress, but as her love for Marcel grew, so did her yearning to stand beside him. Marcel tells her he is about to ascend the throne. He asks if she wants to be empress, a question that stuns her. She had always assumed it was her rightful place. She confirms her desire, and he simply asks her why. She declares her love for him passionately, hurt that he would even consider making her a mere concubine. He tries to reason that an empress is still a recognized wife, but she retorts that she will not be a secondary consort. Ultimatum, retorts that if he will not be make her his empress, he must send her back to Bianteca. With tears in her eyes, she asks the heartbreaking question, does he no longer love her? He pulls her into his arms, vehemently denying it and swearing he loves only her. By standing her ground, Iliano secures her position and becomes the empress of Zacador. But she soon learns that whoever wears the crown must bear its immense weight, a lesson that forces her into adulthood. Now Emperor, Marcel informs her he needs a different kind of support and will take Princess Bane as the first empress. The old treaty is void. With quiet resignation, Iliano is forced to understand and accept her husband's political reality. Elizabeth from the Bane family formally introduces herself, showing polite deference to the empress. Iliano welcomes Princess Bane with cold grace, instructing her to be an example for the imperial palace. Once so attentive, Marcel now began to bring other women into the palace without hesitation. Nobles, citing the empress's inability to conceive, lobby to have their own daughters taken as wives to secure the succession. As power struggles between the concubines intensified, Iliano knew she had to kill the love in her heart to survive. What little affection remained was ultimately destroyed by the emperor himself. The emperor furiously confronts her for punishing his third wife, who missed a prayer meeting due to illness. Iliano calmly replies, questioning if a simple task like transcribing scriptures is truly a severe punishment. She reminds him of the meeting's importance and the third empress's recent poisoning, but he is unmoved. He turns away from her, his voice cold as he expresses his deep disappointment in her. She bites back her pain, thinking of the many times she herself has been poisoned. She asserts her authority, reminding him that managing the imperial women is her domain, not his. She desperately wanted to believe he still loved her, but it was a cold truth that his affection had faded beyond rekindling. One empress's plight, love. Emperor to her, remarking on the chambers, love, but Iliano confesses he no longer visits her. Another lady insists she must go to him, arguing that seduction and conceiving a son is the only way to secure her position. Iliano is appalled at the vulgar suggestion, but the lady presses on, calling a son the cornerstone of the future. Her lady-in-waiting insists that conceiving an heir is a duty she must perform, no matter the means. Iliano contemplates the grim necessity of producing an heir to survive. She hardens her heart, resolving that she must protect herself at all costs. Her pride finally shattered, she allows the emperor back into her life, and he begins to visit her palace once more. Their reunion is violent. She protests his rough treatment, crying out that she is the empress, not a concubine. He pins her to a desk, threatening to stop only when the servants arrive, and vowing never to visit her again. He smirks cruelly, reminding her that he needs his descendants. She begs him to go to the bedroom, to maintain at least a sliver of honor, but he callously refuses. He taunts her, demanding she satisfy his desires if she wants to achieve her own goals. She finally snaps, pushing him away and screaming that she doesn't need his disgusting seed. She declares she would rather die a deposed empress than live in such humiliation. He watches her with a cold, unfeeling gaze. She accuses him of no longer loving her, of only wanting her for an heir. He confirms her fears, stating that whether he loves her or not is irrelevant. She must love him, for he is her only protector. He leans over her, whispering that her tears are still as beautiful as jewels. The last embers of love in her heart die out. She resolves to endure anything for survival and to bear a child. An attendant announces a visitor. Flint Howard of Bianteca has come to see the empress. Duke Flint Howard of Northern Bianteca is here with a proposal for her. Iliano recognizes the name, her expression guarded. Flint gestures to a maid held at knife point, questioning the logic of the situation unfolding before her. Iliano retorts, asking if her homeland is punishing her or dealing with traitors. Flint bluntly informs her that Bianteca never expected anything from her. She feels mocked, but he clarifies that her denial of her homeland simply ended their hopes of using her for political gain. He explains that because of her family's actions, Bianteca can no longer afford to wait. He states his purpose clearly. He has come to take her back to her country. She is utterly stunned. He offers her an escape, a chance to live her final years in peace in her homeland. He reveals this offer comes at the behest of Damien Risana. At the mention of her brother's name, Iliano's face contorts with rage. A quick memory surfaces of Flint Howard, a renowned warrior and friend to the crown prince. The man himself, Flint Howard, stands before her. His glorious reputation, she knew, concealed a past filled with misfortune. His grandfather, the crown prince, died suddenly, allowing the second son, Leopold, to inherit the throne. As a consequence of losing a war, Emperor Leopold sent his nephew, Maximilian Howard, as a hostage. Flint was born a hostage, son of Maximilian, and soon lost his mother as well. The boy, known as Linston, was neglected, leading to an unstable youth. Duke Howard should have been the heir, a fate stolen by the crown prince's untimely death. A strict Bayantecan tradition dictates that no second-born child can ever take the throne. Iliano remembers the suspicious circumstances of the crown prince's death and the mockery it brought from Zacador. Flint repeats his offer, vowing to bring her home. She stares back, shocked into silence. He kneels before her, once again offering a peaceful life in her homeland if she takes his hand. He repeats that this is the wish of Damien Rossana. Iliano erupts, furiously accusing her brother of mocking her. She suspects a political plot, questioning if Damien plans to use her to conquer Zacador and what he promised Flint in return. She declares with conviction that she would rather place her trust in the Emperor than in her treacherous brother. Flint looks at her with pity, calling her husband an untrustworthy man. She staunchly defends Marcel, reminding Flint of his status as Emperor and her husband. Flint offers his personal guarantee of her safety, but she scoffs, having no faith in promises. He bows his head, urging her to think carefully with a clear mind. He clarifies his vow, offering his word not as Damien's messenger, but in his own name, Flint Howard. He gives her 3 days to decide, promising to wait for her in the greenhouse. She dismisses him coldly, telling him not to wait and wishing him well on his difficult path. He looks back, a flicker of something unreadable in his eyes, as he reminds her that he promised her peace. Her headmaid collapses, overcome with distress. The maid prostrates herself, begging Iliano to accept the offer for her own sake, vowing to dedicate her life to her safe return. Iliano understands. Only a severe threat could make her fiercely loyal servant yield to Flint's plan, but she refuses to let Damien Rossana, her brother, control her life. She remembers Damien, once a part of her family's inner circle. He had once told her to support her marriage, framing it as the only way for their family to survive. But once she and Marcel became empress and emperor, his tone swiftly changed. His letters were filled with demands, citing the family's financial support as leverage to extract state secrets. With her paternal home as her only perceived escape, she felt she had no choice but to comply with his treacherous demands. She secretly leaked information from the emperor's office, betraying her husband and her new country. But at her most critical moment, Duke Rossana abandoned her completely. Her desperate letters to Damien recount her misery, her husband's infidelity, and her constant fear. She wrote of the poisons she endured and the pain of her lonely existence. She confessed her terror of being deposed, a fate she felt was inevitable for a woman like her. In her final, desperate plea, she begged him to help her secure a divorce so she could return home. The narrative pauses, questioning what reply Damien sent to her desperate cry for help. Damien's response was pure fury. He called her insane for asking for divorce after all the family had invested in her. He berated her for wasting their money, and then having the audacity to ask for an escape. He callously told her to endure her deposition, but forbade any talk of divorce. Reading his words, her world crumbled. She collapses in grief, the cruel realization dawning. Her family had never cared for her at all. She could no longer trust the family that had so thoroughly betrayed her. She could no longer believe in the promises of her blood relatives. But there was someone else. Lying in bed, exhausted and alone, her thoughts drift to Flint Howard. She recalls his sharp, intense gaze, believing that a man with such eyes would honor his promises. She allows herself a flicker of hope, wondering if a peaceful life might actually be possible. Her lady-in-waiting Vivian enters, having been summoned discreetly. In the greenhouse, Flint's aide urges him to leave, certain the empress will not show. But it is not the empress who arrives. It is her headmaid, who confirms Iliano will not be coming. The maid provides updated intelligence on the patrol schedules and a cleared escape route. She presents a box of identity tokens with instructions for crossing the border through Linston. Flint's aide expresses his distrust, fearing a trap, but Flint silences him with a hand. The maid delivers a coded message. Bayanteca's little son has lost its light. Iliano's message continues through her maid, thanking him and urging him to return home to become emperor without fear of disgrace. With that final message delivered, the maid turns and departs into the night. A court physician delivers stunning news to Iliano. She is with child. Overwhelmed, Iliano covers her mouth, tears of shock and relief streaming down her face. Now, she thinks, she can live. The talk of deposing her for being barren will finally cease. But her joy was tragically brief. In the end, the child was never born. After the miscarriage, Iliano locked herself away, weeping in solitude for days on end. Marcel broods, questioning the point of their nights together if he is unable to protect the resulting child. He laments his fate, wondering if he asked for too much in simply wanting an heir, even a daughter. The constant whispers of deposition made Iliano's life a misery, and just when it seemed things couldn't get worse, they did. An enraged nobleman slams the table, decrying the disgrace of the empress being a bastard child. The court argues that they only accepted her due to her noble bloodline, despite her origins in an enemy nation. They demand the emperor make a decision. Person, the court of Zacador had always scorned her illegitimate origins, deeming her unfit for the throne. Her ladies-in-waiting, gently suggest that she withdraw honorably to avoid further conflict. Iliano looks away, thinking that her position as empress is all she has left. One of her ladies pleads with her, insisting that survival is more important than honor. Iliano responds coolly that her Bayantecan roots, bound by honor, are not so easily changed. She dismisses them, closing the doors of her quarters and shutting herself away with her resolve. An intuition tells her that the end of everything is fast approaching. A maid rushes in, shouting frantically about the Rossana family. They have been completely wiped out. Iliano's eyes widen in disbelief. The maid describes the horror. The new emperor of Bayanteca, Duke Howard, ordered the family's total annihilation. It was the end of a chapter. Her family, her only support, was gone. The once mighty power of the Rossana family had been utterly erased from the world. Her maids weep, terrified of what will now happen to the empress. Iliano calmly accepts her fate, acknowledging that she, too, carries the Rossana bloodline. She thinks grimly that she had refused Flint's offer of escape. A single tear escapes as she whispers her exhaustion. She just wants to rest. She was sick of a life dictated by others, seeing death as the only way out. That death, however, would arrive on someone else's terms, not her own. Facing deposition, she received a visit from the emperor. He was unusually kind, a cruel reminder of their passionate honeymoon. They shared an intimate conversation, speaking more than they had in years. His gentleness, as he personally brewed her tea, was so profound, it made her heart ache with what was lost. But the moment the tea slid down her throat, the illusion shattered. The teacup falls and breaks. The tea had been poisoned. As she collapses, he leans over her, calmly telling her he will send her off. He informs her with chilling finality that she will, at least, die as the empress of Zacador. He asks if she has regrets, having lived a life of glory, a justification for his betrayal. He confesses that he was terrified of her ambition when he first took the throne. His final question is a cruel twist of the knife. Why couldn't she at least bear him a child? If she had given him a son, he muses, that son would have been his successor. His last words to her are a hollow farewell to the love they once shared. As she dies, she wonders where it all went wrong. Was it her failure to protect their child? Was it her refusal to relinquish the title of empress? Was it her naive belief that his love would last forever? Or was it the moment she refused to take Flint Howard's hand and escape her fate? No, she realizes with final clarity. Her misfortune began the day she was sold to Zacador. If she could return to that moment, she would have fought back, even if her father beat her to death for her defiance. She wished desperately to turn back time. She opens her eyes. It is the spring of her 21st year. Someone calls her name. She finds herself sitting in a church, alive and young again. Her friends gossip about her rejecting a marriage proposal, wondering if she plans to join the temple. She reflects on the world's perception of her, a carefree lady of the duchy, destined for a life of luxury. They believe this simply because she is not yet forced into a marriage. Her friends speak with envy of the rumors that her father respects her and her siblings adore her. She remembers the life of dazzling jewels and expensive dresses, but beneath the glittering surface, there was always subtle abuse. Her father's voice haunts her, reminding her that he is the one who made her. He vowed that he alone would choose her husband and would not tolerate anyone tarnishing her dignity. He raised her to be a perfect, conventional noble lady. Her education was extensive but shallow, focused entirely on manners and refinement. She remembers him questioning her need for the library, a place he deemed unsuitable for her. He was nothing told her there was nothing more she morarn, offering only books suitable for a lady. He would redirect her to the tailor, insisting that keeping up with trends was her most important duty. She remembers her younger self, foolishly rejoicing in such praise. She recalls struggling with complex books, feeling lost and unable to understand. Her tutor, complicit in the charade, would advise her to simply skip the difficult parts. She would cry, terrified of her father's punishment, should he discover her academic failings. The tutor would offer false reassurances, promising to lie to the Duke about her progress. But that evening, She was whipped for her disgraceful performance. Her father would tell her to remember the pain, a lesson for failing her duties. He would look down at her, his expression cold, and insist that he was not punishing her. In that moment, she realized she had misspoken, but the reason for the beating remained incomprehensible. She knew she had misspoken, but still couldn't understand why it warranted being beaten until she bled. She had no choice but to beg for forgiveness, and her father would smile, claiming everything was for her own good. He would lean in, his smile sharp, and ask if he had ever led her astray. It was all wrong, all of it. She finally understood that her father was the root of all her misfortune, a truth she never forgot. From the moment of that realization, through her entire first life, she held on to that knowledge. Now, by a miraculous stroke of luck, she has been given a second chance to set things right. She offers a silent prayer of thanks, vowing never to live such a wretched life again. An attendant announces the arrival of the Duke of Rossana. The party guests murmur, wondering about the young woman with the Duke, identifying her as his daughter, Iliano Rossana. A noblewoman points her out, telling her companion to remember the face of Bianteca's most noble flower. The gossip turns to her age. Why is the eldest daughter of the duchy, now over 20, still unmarried? A rumor circulates that the Duke adores her so much, he even refused a proposal from the crown prince. Rival ladies scoff at the idea, calling Iliano a fragile crybaby who could never be a match for the crown prince. Liliana Sanders watches with a knowing smile, calmly remarking that Lady Rossana is simply not yet mature. The gossip shifts to a new, more interesting topic. Rumors of Lady Rossana's uncharacteristically bold behavior at recent social events. Two men discuss the incident at a banquet, where she supposedly scolded a servant for spilling wine. Liliana corrects them with a faint smile, clarifying that Iliano didn't scold the servant, but the lady who manipulated the servant. The men are stunned by this revelation, unable to reconcile it with the timid lady they thought they knew. She wondered if the wine had been poisoned. It was the only way to explain what had happened. The memory took her back to the Marquis of Persiton's banquet. The hostess, Lady Persiton, brightly asked her guests if they were enjoying the tea party. Lady Hairon made it known she was not, citing the presence of someone unwelcome. Her pointed comment was clearly aimed at Lady Rossana, who met her gaze without flinching. Rossana calmly mirrored the sentiment, admitting she also found the company disagreeable and asking what should be done. Stunned by the directness, Lady Hairon could only stammer. Rossana decided she had endured enough. With a cool sip of tea, she implicitly challenged Lady Hairon, suggesting who truly ought to leave. Enraged and flustered, the other noblewoman was at a loss for words, questioning why she should be the one to go. Rossana turned to the hostess, invoking the Marchioness's lessons on etiquette and asking not to be publicly embarrassed any further. The onlookers whispered amongst themselves, speculating on how Lady Persiton had managed to tolerate Lady Hairon for so long. Rossana found the entire uproar amusing. Such trivial matters caused far too much of a stir in high society. She reflected on her own past foolishness, marveling that she had ever survived long enough to become empress. She wished she had been smarter, or perhaps ignorant enough not to notice the webs being spun around her. Her reverie was broken by a familiar voice. A blonde woman, Liliana, approached and asked why she was standing alone. Liliana had once been her dearest friend. Their fathers had arranged their childhood companionship. In those days, whenever Rossana was in distress, Liliana was always the first to rush to her defense. Liliana casually mentioned that Rossana's father was meeting with her uncle. Rossana absorbed the information with a cool, knowing glance. Liliana lamented that the temple had stolen her friend, but Rossana simply extended an open invitation to visit. With a sudden shift in tone, Liliana leaned in, asking if a certain rumor about her was true. Rossana turned, her expression neutral, and inquired as to what rumor she meant. Liliana confronted her directly about driving Lady Hairon from the tea party. Rossana brushed it off as an overblown tale, claiming Lady Persiton had merely obliged an uncomfortable guest. Liliana pressed on, insisting friends shouldn't need to sugarcoat things. She offered to disperse the other ladies, but Rossana refused. With a steady gaze, Rossana told her former friend that such a measure would not be necessary. She recalled a time when their friendship felt real, a memory of shared laughter and easy companionship. Now, however, she understood that her belief in their bond might have been entirely one-sided. Rossana confronted Liliana, complaints about having to act like her nanny. Liliana's denial was swift and vehement. Complaints about having to act like her nanny, expression a mask of shocked innocence as she claimed it was all a misunderstanding. Rosanna continued her quiet indictment, musing that her own childishness must have been a burden, perhaps explaining why she was still unwed. A panicked Liliana grabbed her arm, desperate to stop her from leaving. She demanded to know why Rosanna would trust a country bumpkin over her disdain for Lady Hyron spilling out. In that moment, a crucial memory fell into place for Rosanna. She remembered. In her past life, it was Lady Hyron who had fed her lies about Liliana, warning her to stay away. Rosanna stated plainly that Lady Hyron did not dislike her. Instead, she suspected it was Liliana who held animosity. Liliana froze, realizing a simple apology was all that was needed, but Rosanna had already cornered her. Rosanna noted coolly that if Liliana had just apologized, she could have remained a kind friend. The chance had passed. As she walked away, Rosanna promised she would wait for her, stating their decade of friendship wasn't meaningless to her. Her parting shot was a piece of advice. Associating with ladies of poor etiquette was damaging to one's reputation. She added that such women didn't even know the proper way to offer a greeting. Liliana was left seething, watching the social ground shift beneath her feet. Rosanna stood firm, steeling herself. This was only the start of her new life. She made a solemn promise to herself that she would never again allow others to dictate the course of her life. Walking down a palace hall, she dismissed her recent victory as trivial. Compared to the tragedies she had endured in her past life, this small social triumph was laughable. A maid, new to the palace, nervously wondered where she could find the VIP lounge. Rosanna approached her with a gentle request to be guided there. The maid led her down the opulent corridor to the indicated lounge. Peeking inside, Rosanna realized with a start that the room was already occupied. Inside sat two of the most powerful men in the empire, Grand Duke Flint Howard and Crown Prince Heir's Bianteca. Iliano of Rosanna curtsied, paying her proper respects to the Crown Prince. Flint Howard acknowledged her with a distracted air, bidding her to rise. The Grand Duke then spoke on her behalf, offering to leave so she could rest. She politely declined. Apologizing for the disturbance, Rosanna turned to leave, her resolve hardening. The Crown Prince suddenly stopped her, his expression one of intrigued surprise. He quietly observed that the rumors of her recent transformation were apparently true. He turned to share the thought with Flint, only to find the Grand Duke had vanished. Rosanna's mind turned to the Crown Prince, a man with a complicated history. Heir's Bianteca, the Emperor's cherished youngest son, was the Empire's only heir. 7 years prior, he had disappeared on a diplomatic mission to Zacador and was presumed dead. This event prompted Emperor Leopold to declare a full-scale war against Zacador. The bloody conflict lasted for 3 years, becoming known as the 3-Year War. During the war, Duke Rosanna had spearheaded the search for the emperor's illegitimate son to serve as a new heir. Though an heir was found, he was soon banished. Then, against all odds, the true crown prince returned, victorious and glorious. He had not returned alone, but with his cousin, who had been held captive in Zacador. It was no wonder they disliked her. Her father's quest for a replacement, even a failed one, had surely left a bitter taste. She found their animosity misplaced. It was petty to target her instead of her father. Flint returned, holding the hairpin she had dropped. He offered it as a token to excuse her from further pleasantries. She feigned surprise, acting as if she couldn't imagine he would go to such trouble. Suggested she thought Flint would mock her for using, assured her he such a new, that was not her old-fashioned ladyship's way to get his attention. Flint assured her he knew that was not her ladyship's intention. She smiled graciously, expressing how touched she was by his kindness. While accepting his gesture, she refused a replacement for the hairpin, claiming to have many others. She then made a firm request. The pin should not be sent to her home. She was sure he, being familiar with her father, would understand. Flint's expression showed he understood her unspoken message perfectly, and he agreed. The Crown Prince later questioned Flint about returning the pin. Flint explained he was only trying to return a valuable item to its rightful owner. Concluded by when Flint stating that she asked had for a reason refused to accept it. The Crown Prince advised him not to send it back to the Rosanna family. When Flint asked for a reason, he set his cup down deliberately. Heir's warned that the ambitious Duke Rosanna would use the gesture to spread marriage rumors between Flint and his daughter. The classic tactic of dropping an item was a well-known courting ritual. A lady would drop something to show her interest in a gentleman she fancied. By returning it, the gentleman would signal the start of a courtship. Rosanna's maneuver was actually a rejection of a proposed marriage, but now it made her seem like the one who had spurned the Crown Prince. Heir's grumbled with mock indignation that it felt as if he had been rejected. Risana's warning about her father lingered in Flint's thoughts. He finally grasped the full implication of her words. The Crown Prince warned that Duke Risana would spin rumors about even the Grand Duke falling for his daughter, urging him to get rid of the pin. Flint clenched his hand, agreeing it was for the best. Her father approached her at the banquet, suggesting she go home and rest. Iliano bowed her head in perfect obedience, agreeing to his request. She knew his concern was a pretense. It was his way of controlling her, of preventing any reckless actions. As she was leaving, a knight casually inquired about her rumored quarrel with Lady Sanders. She recognized him instantly. He was one of her father's spies, tasked with reporting her every move. She turned from him, coldly questioning his right to demand an answer from her. The knight was stunned into silence by her flagrant disrespect as she entered her carriage. Alone at last, she seethed at his insolence. She couldn't believe she had ever tolerated such behavior. When the knight had the audacity to enter the carriage with her, she immediately ordered him out. She repeated her command, her voice laced with ice. He merely smirked, claiming his duty was to protect her from harm. She scoffed at his excuse, noting both the lack of danger and the fact that they must pass through the slums, which he then cited. She calmly countered that her carriage did not use that route. She then systematically dismantled his excuse, pointing out a proper guard would be stationed outside the carriage, not inside. Defeated and humiliated, the knight exited and ordered the carriage to depart. Risana let out a long breath, finally free from her father's watchful eyes. The carriage rolled on as she contemplated her path forward. Her goals were clear. Her first and most important objective was to avoid her past life's fate, marriage into the Jacador royal family. To do that, she had to dismantle her father's network of spies. Her absolute top priority was to neutralize every single one of his agents. Back in her room, she resolved to attend fewer social gatherings to avoid unnecessary attention. She was relieved that Grand Duke Howard had understood her message and kept the hairpin. She knew her father's plans for her marriage to the Jacador prince meant any other entanglement would be perilous. And yet, there was a specific reason she had chosen the Grand Duke for her little scheme. She remembered a moment from her past life when he had offered her an escape. He promised that if she took his hand, he would help her return to her homeland and live in peace. She had dropped the pin because a part of her still clung to that offer of hope. It was the hope she had been too weak and afraid to grasp the first time. A sharp tug on her hair brought her crashing back to the present. The maid apologized frantically. Risana warned the maid with a sharp tone not to repeat the mistake. The maid's sweet smile and promise to be careful seemed entirely false. Risana's patience wore thin. She declared the maid's services were no longer required and ordered her out. The young maid stood frozen, shocked by the sudden dismissal. Risana then commanded another maid to escort the fired servant from her room. Her nanny, Pamela, appeared, her smile cloying as she asked what had upset her angelic lady. Ignoring the question, Risana pointed to the maid and ordered Pamela to remove her permanently. Pamela smoothly diagnosed the situation as a simple mistake made while brushing her hair. She scolded the maid, who tearfully tried to explain that her hands were in pain. Pamela tried to placate her, but Risana cut her off, infuriated that her orders were being openly defied. Her anger boiled over. She would not be undermined in her own chambers. She fixed the maids with a cold stare and demanded to know who their true master was. Pamela answered calmly that their master was, of course, Duke Risana. Risana's eyes narrowed. She was in no mood for her nanny's clever word games. Pamela simply replied that she was speaking the truth. Risana's authority was on the line. She singled out another maid and commanded her to summon the butler. She felt a wave of cold fury. In her own room, surrounded by her own staff, no one would obey her. A male attendant stepped forward to intervene, but she cut him off, insisting on seeing the butler. The attendant quickly lied, claiming the butler was currently occupied. Her frustration mounting, she reached for a heavy vase, ready to make her point more forcefully. She warned the servant that if he didn't comply, she would not be responsible for her actions. With absolute finality, she demanded to be taken to the butler now. Once she met with the butler, everything was handled with swift efficiency. She faced the disobedient maids and informed them they were all dismissed. Pamela rushed forward in protest, but Risana ignored her, ordering the maids out of the mansion immediately. She explained their dismissal was due to incompetence and insubordination, then turned her attention to the head maid. The new head maid, Miller, arrived and stated unequivocally that the young lady's orders were absolute. Butler, who arrived and readily agreed. The butler, Jonathan, looked directly at Pamela and told her she too must obey Miss Iliano's commands. Risana addressed Miller, who responded with deference. Rosanna laid down her new rules. She would have no clumsy or talkative maids in her service. Nanny Pamela was subsequently placed under indefinite house arrest for her insubordination. Rosanna knew this was only a temporary victory. Her father would not let his associate remain confined for long. She needed a plan to remove Pamela for good before her father could intervene. Her sister, Isabella, burst into the room unannounced. Rosanna coolly demanded an explanation for the intrusion. Isabella greeted her cheerfully, asking after her well-being. Rosanna repeated her question, her tone making it clear she expected an answer. Isabella laughed, remarking on her sister's changed demeanor and how much she sounded like their mother. She then began to tease Rosanna about disciplining the maid, even offering her own maid as a replacement target. Isabella continued her mockery, questioning if Rosanna's delicate hands could even inflict a blow. Rosanna calmly instructed her sister to take a seat. Isabella commented on Rosanna's flawless poise, observing that she moved as if she had practiced her entire life. Rosanna conceded the point, retorting that Isabella was much the same. Isabella admitted that their father held her to a much lower standard of etiquette. She then brought up her own impending debut into high society. She confessed she could never be like Rosanna, claiming her temper was far too volatile. Rosanna tired of the small talk and urged her sister to get to the point of her visit. She told Isabella to stop wasting time and explain why she was there. Isabella's playful facade dropped. She had heard about Pamela's house arrest and was stunned it was Rosanna's doing. She praised her sister for the bold move, agreeing that Pamela was a harmful influence. She leaned in, a conspiratorial glint in her eyes. Isabella offered a proposition. She could help get rid of Pamela permanently. Rosanna knew her power was limited. Pamela's house arrest would end the moment their father intervened, which was inevitable. She recalled the day her father had forced the governess upon her. The memory of his smug, triumphant expression was still vivid. With the stakes laid bare, she asked her sister for the details of her plan. Isabella recounted her shock upon learning Rosanna, not their father, had ordered the house arrest. She commended her sister, calling Pamela a wretched woman who deserved to be removed. Isabella leaned in once more, her expression eager. She reiterated her offer of assistance in dealing with Pamela once and for all. Rosanna reminded her that the house arrest was fragile and would be overturned as soon as their father found out. She remembered her father's firm decree that she must accept Pamela as her governess. His satisfied sneer at her compliance was a bitter memory. She returned to the present, focusing on the potential alliance before her. Isabella laid out her terms. She would handle Pamela, but Rosanna had to do something for her in return. Her request was simple. At the upcoming royal banquet, Rosanna was to deal with Viscount Alvesai, Isabella's unwanted fiancé. Rosanna asked flatly if she was being asked to arrange an assassination. Isabella quickly waved the idea away. The plan was far more subtle. Isabella wanted Rosanna to charm the Viscount into proposing to her instead. Isabella pleaded desperately, promising she would deal with Pamela if Rosanna could just save her from marrying that man. She begged her to dance with him just once, vowing to repay the favor when Rosanna truly needed help. Rosanna weighed the offer. Isabella was not always trustworthy, but she did keep her word. A single dance seemed a small price. Still, she was skeptical. Could one dance truly make a man like the Viscount propose? Was he really that foolish? The Viscount, it turned out, was indeed that foolish. He fawned over her, proclaiming her beauty to all who would listen. He rambled on about the honor of speaking with her and her famous piety. As they danced, he praised her devotion. Rosanna confirmed her suspicions. The man was an utter fool. She had briefly entertained the notion of marrying him to escape her fate, but now saw it was impossible. Their dance immediately became the subject of intense gossip among the other guests. The plan succeeded beyond her wildest expectations, as now a long line of suitors sought to dance with her. Overwhelmed and furious, Rosanna silently swore that Isabella would pay dearly for this humiliation. When she returned home, Pamela was waiting, a triumphant smirk on her face. Rosanna was stunned. Pamela informed her that the Duke himself had ordered her release. The nanny gloated that she could not be separated from her charge, for who else could ensure she was a perfect lady? Pamela then gestured to Rosanna's hair, noting that her roots were beginning to show. She threatened that if her true murky hair color were revealed, her very lineage would be questioned. A memory flooded back, her younger self asking why her hair was pink. Pamela had told her it was an illness. She had believed the lie so easily back then. Her entire world had been shaped by her nanny's words. The truth had come out much later, after she was already empress. She remembered the letter from her own family, addressed to her as the Empress of Jacador. It demanded the return of a magic heirloom that changed hair color, a keepsake of the late Duchess. The letter had branded her an illegitimate child with no right to the family's treasures. At the time, she had dismissed it as a bizarre trick and refused to believe it. She had contemptuously ordered the letter burned, but that ignored letter came back as a formal, public condemnation. The official document accused her of being an illegitimate child who had stolen an heirloom, a thankless viper. It demanded she repent and atone for her sins by returning the stolen item. And only then, as her world shattered, did she remember everything. She recalled Pamela taking the earrings, promising to keep the precious item safe while she dyed her hair instead. She had sent a desperate letter home to have the governess interrogated, but it was too late. The damage was done. Her unique hair, once explained as an illness, was now twisted into proof of her base nature. She was nothing but a commoner of unknown birth. Her husband had confronted her, his face a mask of disgust, accusing her of deception and theft. In that moment, she knew all was lost. Her noble bloodline was a lie, and she was forever stained by the accusation of theft. Her enemies seized the opportunity, declaring her an impostor. A high-ranking noble proclaimed that such a woman could not be empress, and demanded her removal. Her position, already precarious as a foreigner from a rival nation, was untenable. From that moment forward, her life crumbled into dust. Back in the present, Pamela finished her work. Rosanna extended a false olive branch, suggesting Pamela could retire but still visit to dye her hair. Pamela's smile was chilling. She vowed she would never retire and would remain by Rosanna's side forever. The nanny then suggested it was time for bed. Rosanna felt trapped, recognizing the depth of her predicament. Looking back, she understood that the magic tool had been the catalyst for her downfall. If she had simply returned the heirloom, her legitimacy would never have been questioned, and she might have kept her throne. Now she had to find where Pamela had hidden it. Was she carrying it, or was it in her personal room? Had she already sold it as a stolen good? She pushed the thoughts aside. The immediate priority was dealing with Pamela herself. She needed to check on Isabella's progress with their plan. Isabella welcomed her sister warmly, noting it was her first visit to her room. Rosanna cut to the chase, dismissing the maids for an urgent and private discussion. Isabella instructed her own maid, Emily, to ensure absolute secrecy, especially from Pamela. Isabella complained bitterly about Viscount Alvasai, describing his adoring gaze as being like that of a dead fish. She was, however, delighted to report that he was completely infatuated with Rosanna. Now that her part of the bargain was complete, Rosanna demanded Isabella's help in return. She asked for the plan. Isabella smiled slyly, confirming she had a way. She revealed her plan to frame the nanny as a thief, holding up a distinctive fountain pen as evidence. Rosanna instantly recognized her brother Damien's pen. Isabella explained she would plant it in Pamela's room when their brother was away from the mansion. Rosanna agreed it was a good plan, but suggested they be more thorough to ensure it worked. Isabella hesitated, admitting that stealing from their brother was hard enough. Taking something of their father's would be impossible. Rosanna proposed an alternative. What about their mother's belongings? Isabella looked shocked at the suggestion. A sly thought crosses her mind. If an item is already stolen, acquiring it for herself should be much easier. Isabella expresses her shock and disbelief that the old woman could be a thief. Leah quickly gestures for her to be quiet. The revelation startles Isabella. She eagerly whispers, wanting to know exactly what was taken. Leah identifies the stolen goods as a pair of enchanted, hook-style earrings embedded with black obsidian. They are clearly valuable. A plan forms in Isabella's mind to search Pamela's room. She worries, however, that the thief might have already sold the precious items. Leah's gaze is cold and certain. She knows the thief wouldn't dare sell them unless she had a death wish. The thought of their father discovering the theft sends a chill down her spine. The consequences for the thief would be dire. Just then, her nanny appears with a summons. The Duke is looking for Eliano, and the nanny insists on accompanying her. Eliano's expression darkens with resignation. This dreaded routine is all too familiar. She stands frozen, filled with an overwhelming dread of stepping foot in that place once more. Leah stands before her father, the Duke, who coldly informs her of a marriage proposal from Viscount Alvasai. His eyes narrow with suspicion. He questions if she used vulgar seduction to secure the offer. He slams his hand on the desk in a fury. He cannot comprehend why a respectable man like the Viscount would want her otherwise. Trembling, Leah tries to explain her innocence. She only danced with him, wondering how that could be considered wrong. Her father's fury intensifies at her perceived backtalk. He recalls Pamela's warnings that she had changed. The nanny observes with a grim satisfaction. She suggests that the young lady is in need of some discipline. Terror fills Leah's eyes as a whip appears. Her father gives the chilling order to have her hung up for punishment. The nanny seizes her, but Leah struggles with all her might, screaming in protest against the impending torment. Her father watches with an icy resolve. He's determined to break her spirit and correct her defiant habits today. Isabella is filled with righteous anger. She demands to know why she is being stopped from seeing her father. A servant attempts to block her path, pleading with Lady Isabella to stop. She forcefully pushes him aside, determined to proceed. The horrifying sounds from behind the door stop her short. She can hear her sister's desperate screams and pleas for their father's mercy. The attendant catches up, his words confirming her worst fears. The master is disciplining Lady Iliano, just as he had warned. A sickening realization dawns on her. The brutal sounds she's hearing, this is what her family calls discipline. She has her own memories of her father's punishments. She remembers the sting of the cane all too well, but the sound from beyond the door is different. This is not the familiar sound of a cane. She stands frozen before the door, listening to the sickening thuds. The sound is far heavier, far more brutal than anything she's ever heard. Her father's cruel voice cuts through the air, demanding to know if Iliano will ever again lose her dignity and shamefully seduce a man. The weight of guilt crushes her. This is all her fault. As she reaches for the door, a firm voice commands Isabella to stop right there. It is Damien Rossana, the Duke's younger son, who has appeared to halt her. Isabella turns, her expression a mixture of confusion and shock at his sudden appearance and command. Damien's gaze is unwavering. He repeats his command, his tone leaving no room for argument. He looks at her with a knowing sadness, asking if she truly believes this is the first time such a thing has happened. A horrifying thought dawns on Isabella. Her brother knows everything that goes on in this house. Outraged, Isabella confronts him. She questions how he can just stand there when his own half-sister is being brutalized. Damien seems to ponder the term half-brother. Then he coolly corrects her, reminding her they are supposed to be twins. He leans in, his voice low and intense as he reveals a devastating truth. Iliano is not his twin, and she is certainly not her sister. He challenges her to think. Aside from their eye color, there is no resemblance between him and Iliano. Had she truly never harbored any doubts? Isabella still believes it's wrong, but Damien cuts through her righteousness. He asks what she plans to do, and if she is prepared to take Iliano's place. He warns her not to act rashly, without a proper plan. He has no desire to see their father's wrath directed at her too. Damien takes control, instructing the attendant to escort Isabella to her room immediately. He orders them to pretend she was never here. As he turns to leave, the faint sounds of Iliano's continued pleas for her father to forgive her echo down the hall. He stands before the closed doors, issuing a final, stern command. No one is to be permitted to wander into this hallway. The maids cry out in shock as the nanny emerges, supporting the barely conscious and heavily wounded Lady Iliano. Seeing the bloodstains, the maids panic. They insist she needs treatment immediately and rush to call for a doctor. The nanny holds her charge protectively, screaming wildly that this is her lady. She angrily dismisses the other maids. She insists she will handle the treatment personally and tells them to get lost. As she storms away, the nanny curses the clueless maids under her breath, thinking they should all be replaced immediately. A cruel glint appears in the nanny's eyes. She muses that blood will always tell, revealing the lady's shallow temperament. She recalls the Viscount's letter and his talk of an unforgettable night. This punishment must be the result of that. But as she inspects the young lady's body, she's confused. There are no marks, making her wonder what exactly transpired to warrant such a reaction. Her thoughts turn to speculation. Perhaps the lady simply allowed the Viscount a taste of her lips. The nanny reveals a box of fine medicine, a sign of the Duke's twisted affection. After all, they couldn't possibly leave scars on the lady's body. Leaning over the injured girl, the nanny announces her own punishment. For ignoring her, Iliano will receive no treatment from her today. With a final, chilling smile, she takes her leave, promising to return the next day. The threat hangs in the air. In the haze of pain, a single thought emerges. She never expected things to turn out this way. She had rehearsed it in her mind countless times. This time, she wouldn't just endure it. She would run from the office. But the moment she saw the whip in her father's hand, her resolve crumbled. All strength drained from her body. Her mind went blank, terror erasing every planned act of defiance. She has endured countless pains throughout her life. Her hands clench in the fabric of her dress, Despite all she's been through, she has never learned to endure physical torment. Lying in her bed, tears streaming, she realizes a title won't save her. Becoming the crown princess of Jacador cannot solve this fundamental horror. A single, desperate clarity cuts through the pain. She must escape from her father. Ignoring a maid's cry to wait, Isabella bursts toward her sister's room. Her voice is a raw command, fueled by panic and anger. She screams for everyone to get out of her way. The nanny blocks the doorway, her face contorted in fury. She demands to know who gave Isabella permission to enter. Isabella stops, her eyes burning with an icy rage that silences the old woman's tirade. With a sharp crack, Isabella strikes the nanny across the face. She will not be lectured by a servant. The nanny reels back in shock, questioning if the young lady has lost her mind. Isabella's expression is pure, undisguised contempt. Looming over the cowering woman, Isabella's fury erupts. She demands to know who the nanny thinks she is staring at. Her attention snaps to her sister, motionless on the bed. A surge of protective instinct takes over. The head maid, Emma, steps forward, adjusting her glasses. She informs Isabella that the lady hasn't been treated yet, but assures her she will handle it. The nanny watches nervously as Isabella processes the information, her back turned. The words hit Isabella with the force of a physical blow. Her sister hasn't been treated yet. Fury overtakes her. She whirls around and yanks the nanny up by her hair. She shakes the terrified woman, her voice filled with venom. How could she dare to rest while her sister lay injured and untreated? Catching the nanny in a lie about her whereabouts, Isabella's rage peaks. She shoves the woman to the ground, questioning if she is seen as a joke. Her fury spent for the moment, Isabella stands with cold authority. She orders the mess to be dealt with. She turns her attention back to the bed, her voice softer now. She asks the head maid for a report on her sister's condition. The head maid reports that while treatment is underway, the wounds are deep. The lady will be in a great deal of pain. Isabella presents a small, ornate box to Emma, instructing her to use the ointment within. The head maid's eyes widen in astonishment as she recognizes the contents. It's the rare and costly heirloom. A delighted smile spreads across Emma's face. She confirms it is indeed heirloom, famed for its ability to relieve pain and leave no scars. Isabella is curious. The ointment is exceptionally rare. She wonders how her sister came to possess it. A memory surfaces of Eliano's desperate cries, apologizing to her father through tears of pain and fear. The nanny's vicious smile flashes in her mind. She saw defiance in Eliano's eyes and thought she deserved even more punishment. Her father's menacing face looms in her memory, his voice laced with a threat, hoping she wouldn't have to feel the whip again. Eliano stirs, attempting to sit up. A young maid gently pushes her back down, urging her to rest. She is surprised that the pain is not as severe as she expected. She asks the maid if the nanny went back on her word and treated her. But as she examines the bandages, she knows this level of skill could not be the nanny's handiwork. The young maid denies treating her. She explains that it was Dr. Emma, the primary physician, who tended to her wounds. Eliano presses for more information, asking who summoned the doctor. The maid replies that it was Miss Isabella. The news settles in. If Isabella called the doctor, then who called for Isabella? Her gaze falls on the young maid. She asks if she was the one who went to get help, and the maid timidly admits that she was. Eliano is perplexed by the maid's decision. She wonders why she called Isabella instead of the head maid, or even Damien. The maid explains her reasoning. With the head maid busy and the young master being a man, she felt Miss Isabella would be the most appropriate and comforting person to call. Eliano's gaze turns sharp again. There was one other obvious choice she hadn't considered. The maid looks aghast at the suggestion. She reminds her mistress that the nurse was the one who neglected her in the first place. A flicker of understanding crosses Eliano's face. She closes her eyes for a moment before asking the maid to help her sit up. She takes the maid's hand, thanking her for her quick thinking. She learns the maid's name is Lavender. Eliano observes the young maid. She is quick-witted and her touch is skilled. This one, she decides, will be useful. Now more composed, Eliano has a request for her new attendant. She asks Lavender to summon Isabella and Damien. With her siblings gathered, Eliano explains the situation. She is terrified of the nurse, who must remain by her side because their father favors the woman. She recounts how she nearly died from the nurse's neglect. Yet, their father values the old woman's word over his own daughter's. Isabella is incredulous that their father would force that dreadful woman back into Eliano's room. Eliano simply states it's an order, and they are powerless to stop it. Isabella appeals to her brother, finding the situation ridiculous. Damien, however, coolly tells her to lower her voice, stating he can hear her just fine. Damien turns his cold disapproval on Eliano, telling her to stop causing commotions in the mansion because he is fed up with it. Isabella reacts with tiny shock. A headache blooming, Eliano presses her fingers to her temple. She quietly pleads for both of them to stop. Damien Eliano bristles at her tone. Give him, she quietly orders. Stop, she coolly replies that it was a request, and that his tone should be more polite. The tension between them is thick. She sarcastically asks if she should kneel, and he retorts, asking what he would possibly gain from that. Her strength failing, Eliano leans on her maid for support. She begs Damien to intervene with their father, certain he will be believed over the nurse. Damien looks at her with a hint of pity. It seems she truly doesn't understand the complexities of their situation. He delivers a cold, hard truth. She will never be allowed to marry a man of her own choosing, and she had better remember that. She turns away, her voice laced with weary resignation. She has been aware of that fact all along. Damien believes she has forgotten. He reveals that news of her searching for a husband has been circulating, and this is what provoked their father. Her focus on the nurse was a foolish distraction from the real problem. The revelation leaves her momentarily speechless. Damien announces that he will deal with the nurse himself. Neglecting a noble lady's treatment is a serious crime, after all. As he leaves, he gives her one last command: to get a hold of herself and conduct herself with the propriety expected of her station. She watches him go, reflecting on his talent for choosing the cruelest words. She no longer even expects him to call her sister. A memory from their childhood surfaces. A young Damien approaches her, a serious look on his face, asking if he can tell her something. He reveals a small secret between them. Of the two of them, she was the one born first. Delighted by this new status, the young Eliano gleefully asks him to try calling her sister. She remembers the moment his expression shifted, becoming distant and unreadable. What was that look on his face? A chilling possibility begins to form in her mind. Could it be? The pieces click into place with dreadful certainty. Damien has known for a long time that she is an illegitimate child. His constant coldness towards her, it might be because he knows the truth of her birth. He knows she is not his real twin. Sometime later, she notices the nanny's absence. She casually asks Lavender what has become of her. Lavender replies with a bright smile, informing her that the nanny is injured and currently resting in her room. She elaborates on the convenient accident. The nanny apparently had blurry vision, fell down the stairs, and broke her right leg. To make matters worse, the head maid was passing by with a heavy load, and was so startled she dropped what she was holding. And as fate would have it, the heavy object landed directly on the nanny's other leg. What a coincidence. Eliano understands immediately. There must have been a brewing power struggle between the head maid and the nanny. She muses on the details. Why would the head maid, a person of her station, be carrying a heavy load meant for a sturdier servant? A small, satisfied smile plays on her lips. Since the nanny is sick and can't sleep, she requests that some sleeping pills be brought to her. A noblewoman spots Eliano at a tea party and greets her with cheerful surprise. The lady seems relieved that she is not being chased away this time, and she playfully mentions receiving a letter of apology. Eliano suddenly feels a wave of dizziness, her recovery still incomplete. The other lady expresses immediate concern. She pushes through the weakness because she must be here. These tea parties function much like exclusive private clubs. This is where the true currency of the nobility is traded: information. Thankfully, the gossip about her recent change in demeanor faded away more quickly than she had anticipated. It was all thanks to a statement made by a prominent figure who put the lesser-ranked Lady Heir in her place. He had declared that since the eldest lady of Rosanna handled the affair according to the proper rules, there was nothing more to be said. The issue with Lady Sanders was similarly dismissed as unworthy of further discussion, effectively silencing the gossips. Since that decisive intervention, everyone has kept their mouths shut on the matter. She sips her tea, musing that he dislikes gossip as much as ever. Still, it was surprising to see him express his disapproval so directly. Her thoughts are interrupted by a new, more intriguing topic of conversation. Someone's aunt claims to have seen barbarians in the nymphs. The ladies express their shock. For those who do not believe in the gods, to set foot in such a sacred place is pure audacity. Eliano's mind works quickly. This rumor suggests the Sharai are attempting to make contact with the Holy See. These barbarians, the Sharai, are a nomadic tribe that roams the continent. Each one is a formidable warrior, known for their bold spirit and hardy nature. Though the world dismisses them as savages, she privately thinks their nomadic lifestyle is hardly a crime. The gossip becomes more specific. Rumor has it many barbarians are hiding on the island of Britannia, which lies within their own Vianteca territory. Another lady fumes. Since the bastards from Jacador also lay claim to Britannia, this feels like yet another calculated mockery of their nation. The sentiment is shared among the ladies. They should lead an army and wipe the barbarians out completely, ensuring they can never return. Iliano cuts into the heated conversation, her voice calm as she brings up the subject of Britannia itself. She reminds them that the island is a sacred place, the home of the Grand Temple. It is a consecrated, untouchable domain where war is strictly forbidden. The island, she explains, is under the protection of the holy knights of nymphs. She recounts the holy scriptures. The island was once a sanctuary for elves, and to spill blood upon its soil would unleash a terrible curse upon them all. All temples on the continent are considered sacred and inviolable, existing as extraterritorial zones. These holy sites are managed by a single, neutral state. It is a state that owes allegiance to no political faction. This neutral power is the Holy See of Nymphs. A noblewoman with green hair laughs, dismissing the notion of simply handing the island over to the nymphs as a foolish idea. The lady from earlier is aghast. Nymphs may be neutral, but it is still a nation. Such a concession is impossible. She declares passionately that sovereignty belongs to Vianteca. Then, seeing the mood, she quickly backtracks, claiming she was just speaking her mind. Iliano observes the green-haired lady with new interest. She had dismissed her as merely an emotional child, but when the conversation turns to territory and war, she becomes quite serious. It is just as one would expect from the daughter of a northern count. A blonde lady yawns languidly. The territorial dispute with Jacador isn't just about expanding land, it's a struggle for control. She reflects that in her past life, she would have avoided such difficult conversations and retreated to the gardens with the other ladies. But relying on past memories alone is too dangerous now. This is especially true with the precarious marriage discussions with the Jacador royal family looming. She resolves to increase her social activities. She must gather as much information as she possibly can. For now, this is the best and only path forward. She examines an invitation she received. It's for a horseback riding event hosted by Veronica Heirn. Lady Heirn graciously offers her a way out if she cannot ride, but Iliano accepts. She is eager for the chance to see the renowned steeds of the Heirn family. The hostess is thrilled by her acceptance. She promises to ensure the lady gets a good look at the horses she brought to the capital. She recalls that in her past life, she was never allowed to attend such an event. Her nanny had always deemed it unsuitable for a lady like her. This time, however, she thinks it could be a refreshing change of pace. Back in a private discussion, Iliano asks for an update on the missing item. She wants to know if it has been found. She surmises that the thief must have hidden it somewhere within the estate. If their father knew of the theft, the culprit's head would already be on the chopping block. He would not have stayed quiet. She insists that her father seemed completely oblivious to the situation. She tested him herself. Even when she mentioned the obsidian earrings directly, he showed no flicker of recognition. Her sister finds this impossible to believe. How could he not know about the theft? She then reveals that her mother confirmed the earrings were a family heirloom from her side of the family, which contradicts what Iliano knows. Iliano stands firm, but her sister is resolute. She claims to have the true family heirloom in her own possession. She presents a golden chalice, explaining it is a magical artifact called Goldstein. It has the power to neutralize any poison. She sets the cup down, admitting she doesn't understand why her mother gave it to her. After all, who would dare try to poison her? Given their mother's obsession with collecting, she finds it unsurprising that she would have multiple items she called heirlooms. A dark realization hits Iliano. If this cup had been present in her previous life, the poisoning incident and the loss of her child would never have happened. She can't help but realize the truth. In this mansion, she was, and always has been, a complete outsider. Her sister struggles to recall another of their mother's treasures, mistaking a shell for a rare pearl. She had always believed that her mother, who was so kind, genuinely loved her, even though she wasn't her biological child. The mention of the shell jogs her sister's memory of a trip to Bedfont Beach, where their mother sought to acquire it at an auction. Instead of giving her a tool to conceal her illegitimacy, her mother had kept the existence of the true heirloom, the Goldstein, a secret from her. The trip was a pretense. The real goal was the auction. She is left wondering why her mother would be so cruel. A memory of her mother offering her a favorite tea to take on a trip surfaces. A simple kindness, now suspect. At the riding event, the ladies gather around to admire the famous horse, Hashi, marveling at its shiny coat. One young lady, captivated by the magnificent beast, expresses her desire to touch it just once. Lady Heirn quickly intervenes, warning her against it. A careless touch might earn her a kick from its hind legs. She explains that Hashi only shows a calm demeanor towards the stable master. A lady wonders aloud if even His Highness the Crown Prince, the celebrated war hero, could possibly tame such a spirited horse. A knowing smile plays on Lady Heirn's lips. She, too, is looking forward to the day he might try. The conversation shifts, as the ladies begin to wonder when the princess will make her appearance. Just then, a cry goes up from the crowd. The princess has arrived. She walks with a cold purpose, her expression so severe that the onlookers wonder why she looks so angry. The wind whips at her hat, and her maid fusses, worried that her lady might be cold. Iliano is unfazed. The wind is strong, but compared to the gales of Linkston, it is nothing more than a gentle breeze. She remembers that place, a land of beautiful natural scenery, where she once stood beside him. She lets the wind take her hair, a genuine smile on her face. She finds the feeling of freedom quite nice. A man approaches, holding out the red ribbon that the wind tore from her hat. Recognizing Duke Howard, Iliano dips into a polite curtsy, expressing her gratitude for his kindness. She adds that she will cherish this display of kindness in her heart. The Duke is slightly puzzled by her choice of words. Once again, she clarifies, referencing a past incident and apologizing for once again breaking a belonging of his. He disagrees with her assessment of the situation. While she feels a flicker of embarrassment for her past conduct, she challenges him directly, her eyes bright with curiosity. If that's not what he thinks, then what is his opinion? The Duke's reply is blunt and immediate. He has no thoughts on the matter at all. She smiles, noting that a lack of judgment implies a lack of interest. It is rare for her to meet someone so dispassionate. She decides to press her advantage, mentioning the trouble she had with Viscount Alvasai. The Duke stiffens almost imperceptibly. Recovering his composure, he offers a bland platitude. Choosing a good man to marry could be a viable option for her. She looks away, her voice flat. Her husband will be chosen by her father. Though society believes her father adores her, she knows the truth. She is nothing more than his puppet. In her mind, she sees the future she craves. This very man, sitting on a throne, having taken her father's life and erased her family from existence. And that future, she can't help but desire it with every fiber of her being. Any man who marries her will gain her father's support and the Rossana ducal family as an ally. She is a prize to be won. The Duke advises caution. If her father is truly that kind of person, she should be even more careful in selecting a husband. She turns the question back on him, but he states plainly that he has no intention of choosing a bride. She calls his bluff, revealing she knows the Crown Prince is arranging a match for him, whether he wants one or not. His expression betrays his surprise. He clearly wonders how she came by that information. She smiles sweetly, reminding the Duke that social circles have eyes and ears everywhere. She is not someone to be underestimated. The Duke looks down, conceding the point. He then reveals a crucial piece of information. He has already declined the matchmaking proposal. Seeing her opening, she presses forward. If he has declined the prince's offer, what does he think of her proposal? She offers herself as a candidate for his hand in marriage. A strategic and bold proposition. He demurs, stating he doesn't make value judgments about himself. She insists that for life-changing decisions, such judgments are essential. He relents, turning away slightly. He will grant her special permission to make her assessment. She touches her hat, reminding him of the ribbon he returned. If his heart wavers even slightly, that ribbon. He cuts her off, his expression firm. He does not like the combination of marriage and politics. She feigns surprise, questioning if that is what he thought she was suggesting. She hadn't expected him to interpret a lady's heart that way. What she truly meant, by her value judgment, remains unspoken between them. The Duke decides to end the conversation. He states he understands her intentions and will tie everything that happened to the ribbon and forget it. Seeing the conversation is over, Iliano turns to her maid. It is time to find Ms. Heirn. They find the Crown Prince struggling with the proud horse, unable to get it to submit. The horse rears, and Lady Heirn rushes to apologize to His Highness for its unruly behavior. Iliano watches with a flat expression, her thoughts a dry commentary on his lack of ability. Her companion chides her under her breath. questioning why she must always make such remarks to make others uncomfortable. Suddenly, the horse breaks free and charges directly towards Eliano, causing the crowd to cry out in alarm. The onlookers are shocked. The horse, which had been so violent just moments before, stands calmly before the princess. She reaches out and strokes the horse's nose. She tells Hashi that the color black suits him very well. Lady Heirn is astounded, wondering what is happening. Eliano simply smiles, agreeing that he is, in fact, a very kind and gentle horse. A companion recounts how even the best local men failed to tame the horse Hashi, noting her father called it reckless to even try. Veronica expresses complete confidence in Eliano's ability to master the horse, bringing a pleased smile to Eliano's face. A stern-faced nobleman, watching them, resolves that he will have to give it another try himself. The crown prince stands aloof, while a flustered Lady Heirn apologizes profusely to him. The crown prince, now mounted on a white steed, cheerfully challenges Duke Flint to a race. Lady Heirn turns to Eliano in dismay, worried that she can no longer ride now that Hashi is occupied. Eliano offers a provocative suggestion. Why doesn't Heirn simply try riding the infamous horse herself? A stable hand struggles with the beast in the background. Heirn demurs, claiming she lacks the skill of Veronica. Eliano listens with a calculating, knowing smile, her own intentions hidden. Eliano whispers a warning to Heirn, advising her not to incur the wrath of the possessive little son. Lady Heirn is shocked by this revelation, wondering aloud if the prince is truly so intolerant. Eliano hints at the political implications of her riding the horse, noting that since she is Rosanna's daughter, it might be seen as a challenge to the crown prince, who failed to tame it. She explains the complexities of high society, where such subtle power plays are crucial for long-term survival. Her companion seems troubled by this new understanding. Heirn begins to apologize, but Eliano cuts her off coldly, stating she has no hobby of receiving an apology twice. She instead redirects Heirn to offer greetings to the crown prince, framing it as a matter of proper etiquette. A grateful Heirn thanks her and rushes off. Just as Lady Heirn is about to leave, Eliano stops her. She has one last thing to say. A riding crop drops to the ground, as Eliano decides it will be sent to Lady Heirn's estate. Eliano finds Duke Flint bowing before her. She tells him to raise his head, as she did not come seeking a formal greeting. The Duke looks up with an expression of sincere regret, apologizing for having misunderstood her feelings. He clutches a token she gave him, vowing to keep it and never forget what happened today. Eliano remains silent and composed, though she is curious about what prompted his sudden change of mind. He confesses that he will tell her his reasons when he musters enough courage. Eliano analyzes his indirect manner of speaking, realizing it is a trait learned from the crown prince. This reveals he's not just a token friend, but a close confidant. He offers to deliver an invitation to Lady Heirn, but Eliano refuses, stating she is not a messenger and he is a duke. He humbly asks her to deliver it as a token of their communication, his expression pleading. He explains he cannot send it from his own home because there are too many watchful eyes. Eliano takes the letter with a neutral expression, asking if there is anything else. He leans in close, whispering a small piece of advice on proper address for her to pass along to Lady Heirn. Elsewhere, a woman furiously demands to know how her jewel could have simply grown legs and vanished. A maid's attempt to report the missing jewel is met with fury for her interference, just as Eliano and her companion arrive on the scene. Eliano asks about the commotion and learns that Miss Isabella's jewel was stolen, leading her to demand a search of all the servants' rooms. Eliano's gaze sharpens as she hears that the Goldstein has also vanished, connecting the two disappearances. She pieces together the thief's plan, using the Goldstein to cover their true intentions. It's a clever but flawed strategy. She quietly asks if her mother has returned yet, her hand resting on her dress in a moment of contemplation. The answer is no. The timing is wrong. For the plan to succeed in removing the nanny, the Duchess needed to be present to witness the entire staged event. Eliano feels a surge of frustration. She had believed Isabella would handle this well, but now everything is complicated. A maid rushes in with news that the family knights have arrived to search all the servants' rooms, and even the knights' quarters. The knights are offended, but they search the servants' areas with fiery determination to avoid having their own quarters inspected. The fact that even the knights' quarters are subject to search proves just how valuable the Goldstein truly is. The timing is unfortunate, and with her brother Damien away, Iliano knows she must resolve this fabricated situation herself before her mother returns. She realizes she must wrap this up quickly. With cold authority, Iliano orders the search to begin immediately in her nanny's room, the closest one. She remembers her past life as the Princess of Jacador. In that life, her nanny, Pamela, was a pawn for her father and was nearly killed by her ex-husband after being caught. It was Iliano who had given Pamela jewels and sent her on the run, an act of mercy she came to regret for the rest of her life. Now she is resolute. It is time for Pamela to pay the proper price. Pamela, the nanny, is outraged when knights burst into her room, furiously questioning their authority to trespass. Iliano appears and calmly explains that a thief has stolen from Isabella and their mother, asking for the nanny's cooperation. Pamela's face twists into a sneer as she remarks that it is nice to see the real Lady Leah, feigning concern for her belongings. Iliano feigns innocent surprise, claiming to be unaware of the state of her own belongings. She then reminds the nanny that she is the one who manages all her things. The nanny freezes, trapped by the implication. Pamela is aghast, her mind racing. She cannot comprehend why Leah isn't sending the knights away. It is then that she feels it clearly, a chilling certainty. The young lady has changed. After all the years she spent raising her, Pamela cannot believe the girl she molded could be so easily tamed by others. For a moment, she wonders where it all went wrong, but her confidence quickly returns. It doesn't matter because she didn't steal anything. She confidently invites the knights to search her room. One of the knights vows to report the lady's rude behavior to the Duke immediately. His shadow falls across a chest, hinting at a hidden secret. Suddenly, a knight emerges from the room, triumphantly holding a golden chalice, declaring the missing goldstein has been found. The knight presents the shining cup, confirming it is the lost item. Isabella flies into a rage, striking the nanny and screaming at the wretched thief. While maids restrain her, Isabella accuses the nanny of stealing out of spite. The nanny desperately claims she is innocent. The maid Miller joins the accusation, claiming Pamela orchestrated a scheme and even broke her leg. Isabella confronts the head maid, refusing to believe her and demanding she confess her wrongdoing. Pamela turns to Leah with a desperate, pleading look, begging the girl she raised to believe her innocence. Leah looks down, her thoughts unreadable. How could her own nanny do this? She looks up, her voice calm but her expression full of disappointment. She knows her nanny didn't steal her belongings. The nanny's eyes widen in horror as she realizes the truth. This was a test of her feelings, and she has failed. Her desperation turns to fury. She screams at Leah, asking how she could do this to the one who raised her. Isabella scoffs, retorting that raising her was simply the nanny's job, and she has no right to act so indignant. Isabella's anger peaks as she accuses the nanny of leaving her elder sister unattended while she was covered in blood. The other servants begin to whisper, recalling the recent fight between the nanny and the eldest daughter. The narrative is turning against Pamela. Pamela collapses to the floor, clawing at her hair and screaming that Leah will regret this. In a final, crazed outburst, she threatens that she cannot be driven out because she knows her lady's secret. The threat hangs in the air, a final, desperate gambit. Iliano recalls her past life, where Pamela was the very first person to take something precious from her. Because Pamela stole a magical stole, Iliano took the blame, suffered the shame, and ultimately died. She wonders if it would have been less unfair if she had not intervened back then. Perhaps, she muses coldly, she should have just let Pamela's husband kill her. As the nanny is shoved to the floor, Iliano steps forward and orders the knights to stop. She declares that she herself will decide the nanny's punishment. She had been prepared to forgive Pamela out of affection, but the woman's shameless and vicious nature has sealed her fate. Looking down at the groveling woman, Iliano delivers a chilling sentence. Cut off Pamela's right wrist. She stands over the scene, her expression cold and resolute, as she repeats the order to cut off Pamela's right hand. When the butler hesitates, Iliano's sharp tone questions if he heard her. He stammers his compliance. Iliano internally notes the bitter irony of the timing. Just then, her brother Damien arrives. Pamela crawls towards him, pleading for the young master to clear her of this unjust grievance. Damien holds a familiar pen, wondering aloud where it had gone, seemingly oblivious to the chaos. He turns to Iliano and tells her that she was wrong. He holds up the stolen pen, revealing that his belongings were taken as well. Iliano is momentarily baffled. The artifact belongs to their father, not to her. Damien questions her judgment, asking if severing a hand is truly a fair punishment. Iliano asserts her authority as the elder sister and asks if he won't respect her decision. Damien's eyes glint with cold understanding. He reminds her of the nanny's threat to reveal their secret. He amends the punishment, cut off her right hand and her tongue. First, gag the noisy woman. He tells Pamela she should thank Eliano for the mercy of letting her keep her left hand. He declares he will take her tongue himself, as punishment for daring to bite her master. Pamela is gagged and restrained, her muffled screams pleading for the Duke. Her last intelligible words are a desperate attempt to use the young lady's secret as leverage. Damien's expression darkens. He is furious that she would dare to threaten him. As Pamela is held down, it is explained that any servant of Rosanna who steals will have their hand cut off and be cast out. An axe gleams, serving as a warning to anyone else with bad habits. Pamela's muffled pleas for forgiveness are cut short as Eliano watches on, impassive. The brutal scene proves too much for Isabella, who collapses. The maids cry out in alarm as the second young lady faints. Damien expresses his regret, wishing he had sent his sister away first. He orders them to take Isabella to her room and call for Emma. Eliano calmly asks the butler if Pamela is dead. He replies that she still has a pulse. Eliano coolly remarks that it's unlikely she would die from just a lost tongue and hand. She instructs Miller to take Pamela to her room for treatment. With a look of revulsion, she orders the severed appendages to be thrown away immediately, calling them disgusting. Elsewhere, Crown Prince Heres vents his exhaustion to Flint. He states his preference for his own matchmaking over his father's, but Flint questions if he has that luxury. The prince speaks of the emperor's fondness for Flint and expresses his own gratitude for their friendship. He insists that everything he told the emperor was sincere, his gaze unwavering. He reaffirms his genuine friendship. Flint, without looking up from his work, acknowledges that the prince has always kept his promises. Flint, in turn, swears his lifelong loyalty, stating that he truly means it when he calls the prince his lord. The prince notes Flint's dry, emotionless delivery. He cannot read the man's thoughts, but he trusts his loyalty. The prince mentions his fiancée's curiosity about their friendship, how she perceives them as complete opposites. He concludes that despite their differences, they are still kin. Flint remains impassive. Heres Vianeka and Flint Howard were indeed as opposite in life as they were in appearance, with Heres being the empire's joy from birth. From the moment of his conception, Heres was the destined crown prince, the precious son of an aging emperor. The emperor, desperate and late in his reign, lavished affection on his only heir. While raised with immense care, Heres's natural sociability and determination outshone any arrogance he might have developed. His path to the throne seemed secure when Vianeka's diplomatic mission arrived in Linkston. However, the mission was a trap. The reapers Heres brought were all massacred, and he himself was nearly killed. He would have died that day if Duke Flint had not appeared like a bolt of lightning to save him. Flint urges the prince to return, knowing his disappearance will plunge the empire into chaos. The prince suggests escaping north to Jacador, but Flint informs him the border is on high alert, with the official story being that he never set foot in Linkston. Flint delivers a grim warning. A great war is coming. Heres realizes with dawning horror that Emperor Alexander orchestrated the attack, and that Jacador has been preparing for war for a long time. He grabs Flint in a rage, demanding to know why Vianeka wasn't warned, which would have prevented him from leading his people into slaughter. He is left speechless and shaken by the depth of the betrayal. For the first time, Heres sees raw fury in Flint's eyes, as Flint reminds the prince that he, too, was a hostage in Linkston with no one to protect him. Flint addresses his followers, stating that Vianeka has abandoned them, and they must now take a more practical path. His people speculate that Emperor Alexander is giving the prince a chance to take revenge on his enemies. The prince asks Flint if his intense training and study were truly just for survival. One of his followers kneels, pledging to follow whatever decision he makes. Flint clarifies their position. Their true enemy is Jacador, not Vianeka. The prince responds that he will pretend he didn't hear that. Their loyalty was so profound that Heres might have been killed by his own men, not Jacador's, had they not trusted him. He learned he had to protect himself, especially upon hearing that Duke Rosanna had already found a new heir. Clasping his hands, the prince rallies his friends, vowing they will return in triumph. He swears on his own blood to reclaim what was lost, promising Flint and his followers titles and honor as his saviors. During the war, mysterious masked warriors intervened on behalf of Vianeka. Appearing at a critical moment when Vianeka was on the brink of collapse, these concealed fighters turned the tide of battle. The prince, leading the charge in disguise, gives orders to free prisoners, burn supplies, and save their people. His eyes burn with rage at the atrocities committed by the enemy. He gives a ruthless command: do not spare any looters, even if they are from Vianeka. The black-clad warriors become legends, hailed as heroes who saved countless civilians from the ravages of war. But despite their heroic efforts, the gap in military strength was too great to overcome. To end the war, Jacador's greatest military chief, Restil Valtheim, joined the battle. However, the famed general was struck down by the masked warrior, Flint Howard. At that moment, Heres tore off his mask, revealing his identity to all. Holding the enemy general's head high, he single-handedly reversed the momentum of the war. With the crown prince's survival confirmed, the morale of Vianeka's forces soared. Heres took command from the emperor, leading the army with newfound authority. He achieved a great victory, returning home a glorious war hero. Before the emperor, Heres gives full credit to Duke Howard for saving his life and securing their victory. He asks the emperor to formally recognize Flint as the Duke of Howard, wanting to keep his savior by his side for life. Emperor Leopold warmly welcomes the new Duke Howard into his confidence. Flint is officially proclaimed Maximilian Howard's successor, receiving new lands and wealth. The emperor expresses his complete trust in the new duke to protect the empire. Duke Howard became a new power, but he remained reclusive, often staying in the north. It became the crown prince's recurring task to drag Flint back to the capital. Flint questions this, stating plainly that his rightful place is in the north. The prince laments that it is a pity none of the capital's ladies have captured Flint's heart. A woman named Adele Evans arrives with stacks of documents, suggesting the prince should focus on his own marriage instead of bothering the duke. The prince jokingly suggests that Adele should marry Flint, to which she reacts with disbelief. Adele playfully declares that her ambition is simply to snatch up a handsome young man. She asks if there are any cute men from the north she can take, promising to care for him well. A courtier dabs his eyes theatrically, suggesting the young man she is already meeting, much to the prince's amusement. Adele realizes they are teasing her about the man Veronica introduced, noting how slowly gossip travels. Flint steers the conversation to a serious matter, asking Adele's opinion on intelligence about Sherai's new base. Adele finds the theory plausible, suggesting Sherai may have abandoned the north for a new target. The prince thoughtfully suggests sending reinforcements to the border, just in case. Adele poses a pointed question: what would the prince and Flint do if the emperor himself played matchmaker? Flint curtly tells her to leave if she insists on talking about marriage, warning her not to make him force her out. Adele persists, arguing that he must marry to reclaim the Howard seal, reminding him that the emperor himself supports this. She suggests a marriage of convenience, but Flint questions the fate of the woman, who would be used and discarded. Adele is dismissive. If a woman becomes a duchess, she must be prepared to handle such burdens herself. She reminds him of their family's promise to recover the Howard seal, a duty she feels deeply. She passionately declares that they must return to Vianeka and reclaim their legacy. Flint, holding a seal, quietly admits that he is being honest. He confesses that he doesn't see the seal as anything more than a keepsake. Adele insists it's a treasured item from the late emperor, meant to be returned when the crown prince came home. Flint wonders if the emperor is merely testing his loyalty, but Adele dismisses the thought. Flint warns her against greed, telling her to consider the implications of the emperor posthumously honoring his grandfather. Adele counters, reminding him that the emperor has long promised to honor Crown Prince Alphonse. She points out that the emperor repeated this promise upon his return from the war. Flint falls silent. Changing the subject, Adele asks about the noble lady he recently met. Flint's response is blunt and final: she is not acceptable. Back at the estate, the Duchess proudly shows Iliano a beautiful pearl. Iliano compliments her mother's impeccable taste, earning a pleased laugh. The Duchess casually mentions hearing a commotion while she was away. Iliano smiles, ready for the discussion. She asks how they should deal with the nanny's crime. The Duchess sighs, explaining that everyone, especially a cold and furious Damien, wants Pamela sent away. Damien's position is unwavering. Keeping a servant with kleptomania is unacceptable. The Duchess takes her daughter's hands, appealing to her gentle nature and asking her not to cast Pamela out. She pleads with Leah to take Pamela back into her service. Iliano's answer is immediate and firm: no, she cannot take her back. The Duchess is stunned, demanding to know why she is being so heartless. She reminds Iliano of Pamela's lifelong devotion, questioning how she could refuse. Iliano meets her mother's gaze, stating that as a Rosanna, she feels the same as Damien. She then delivers the final blow, asking if her mother didn't hear what the nanny did to her. The Duchess, defeated, worries about casting Pamela out without a place to go. Iliano offers a simple, elegant solution with a serene smile. Her mother should take Pamela in. She adds that if the Duchess takes responsibility, both she and Damien will accept the outcome. Weary and outmaneuvered, the Duchess agrees and dismisses her daughter. Iliano relaxes, content for now. Pamela has been removed from the estate. She acknowledges it's a shame she couldn't expel her completely, but this is an acceptable compromise. She recalls that Pamela was originally her mother's maid. That's why the confrontation had to happen without the Duchess present. Had her mother seen Pamela's true colors in a moment of crisis, she would not have been able to protect her. A maid's arrival interrupts her thoughts. The maid offers to bring some Melanie tea. Iliano notes the tea's unique scent of flowers and grass. She remembers that the person who gave her the tea described it in the exact same way. With a flicker of suspicion, she calls for a silver stick to test for poison. After a moment, she smiles grimly. They didn't intend to kill her, so they must retain some affection after all. Miller, the head maid, arrives at the door and is permitted to enter. Iliano dismisses the other servants, needing to speak with Miller in private. She asks if Miller has investigated the matter she was assigned. Miller confirms she has, and Iliano quietly instructs her to continue. Iliano confirms the name she heard was Esta. Miller reports that this place does not accept requests by letter, adding a new wrinkle. Iliano cuts her off, stating that is all she needed to know. She will handle the rest herself, and warns Miller to feign simple curiosity if anyone asks. Miller quietly agrees, understanding the instruction. Iliano has one final question for her trusted maid. She asks who is the first person in the household to receive the mail. Miller informs her that, as per her new instructions, all mail addressed to Lady Iliano is now brought directly to her. The maid explains the usual process. Tom sorts the mail, and aides filter it before delivering it to their masters. Iliano thinks about Isabella, who has been flooded with love letters since breaking her engagement. Isabella had expressed a lack of interest in forming ties with the ducal family, yet Iliano has never received a single letter, other than the one disastrous proposal. The chilling realization dawns. Someone has been intercepting her mail, and even with Pamela gone, it is still happening. She holds a particular letter, realizing its potential as bait. But before she uses it, she cannot resist the urge to see what is inside. With a cunning smile, she orders Miller to repackage the letter and ensure it is delivered. The letter is a formal invitation to a banquet from Flint Howard. She flushes, stunned and embarrassed. She had been so sure it was a love letter. She slams the invitation down in a fit of pique. All that fine paper wasted on a simple invitation. She questions her own judgment, wondering if she jumped to conclusions about his interest. She recalls his sincere apology for misjudging her feelings. She remembers him vowing to treasure her token forever, and it all led to this, a formal invitation. She thinks back to the day their connection was formed. She admits bringing up marriage was impulsive, but she does not regret it. She knows that now, Flint Howard is her only viable option. His promise to explain himself when he finds the courage rings in her ears, but she knows she doesn't have the luxury of waiting for his courage to grow. Time is running out. A looming decision requires something truly decisive. She needs to provide a tangible symbol of courage, something to place directly in his hands. It is a constant struggle to even leave the house once. Her attendants smile sweetly, but she knows approval for anything is never easily won. A fit of frustration overcomes her as she faces a terrible wardrobe, all thanks to Pamela's shopping spree. She desperately needs a tailor. The maids remember the nanny's renowned taste, but wisely choose to keep their opinions to themselves. A firm command is issued to stop the carriage. She steps down, informing her maids that she has an unscheduled stop to make. A gift for the madam must be prepared, and she has a specific shop, Astor, in mind. The shopkeeper is utterly delighted by the noble lady's arrival, welcoming her to look around. She instructs her maids to wait outside, and they comply without question. The eager shopkeeper offers a tour of the greenhouse, filled with fresh flowers. The proprietor offers scissors for her to arrange the flowers herself, and the lady's hand tightens in silent resolve. Her request is specific and direct. She wants the blue aster. She recalls seeing a deep blue aster on the sign, but sees none here, wondering if she came to the wrong place. The shopkeeper assures her this is the right place, and leads her to a more private section. Her instructions are clear. Those maids must never find out about this business. The shopkeeper agrees, understanding the need for discretion. The shopkeeper leads the way. One maid, Lavender, grows anxious, insisting they must follow their lady. Her companion Jane is utterly baffled. Lavender frets that something terrible could be happening. Jane sips her tea, naively believing their lady is fine since she isn't alone. Lavender is beside herself with frustration. Lavender has a dreadful suspicion that their lady is meeting a man behind a closed door. She tries to rouse her companion, but a man's voice stops them, addressing Lavender and Jane by name. The man, holding flowers, calmly reassures them that their lady is in good hands with the staff. He charmingly offers to make a flower ring for the flustered Lavender to help pass the time. He gently takes her hand, remarking how well the ring would suit her. Inside the greenhouse, a cloaked figure confirms they have arrived. The cloaked figure has already deduced she is from Jacador. She explains that one's accent always betrays their origins. She confidently adds that an average citizen of Vianteca would never notice. He realizes with a jolt that the woman before him is exceptionally perceptive. She praises the Astor Guild and suggests his shrewdness deserves a discount. She refuses any discount, insisting on paying the full price for job done perfectly. He agrees with a delighted smile, asking what item she is searching for. With a sharp gaze, she states her need: a magical tool. Its purpose is to change the color of one's hair. He asks how it's activated. The activation is simple, she explains. One just has to hang it on an ear. He stops his work, intrigued. He has never heard of a magical tool that works with such ease. She confirms its simplicity. She wore it, and it worked without any other effort. He can only wonder if she possesses some latent magical talent. She flatly denies being anything other than an ordinary person, and he moves on, asking for the item's description. She begins to describe the item, its form like a lantern hanging in her memory. He finishes his notes and sketch, certain this is enough information to proceed. She emphasizes the urgency of her request, and he confidently assures her that finding items is his specialty. As he departs, he notes that the blue aster symbolizes trust. It's a loaded remark. Just as he is about to leave, she calls for him to wait. She asks for his name, feeling she has a right to know who handles her business. She senses his hesitation and offers to withdraw the question. He tells her his name is Austin, and the name hits her like a physical blow. She processes the shocking revelation. The guild master of Astor is a woman. She recalls her past life, remembering Astor as a powerful, continent-wide organization. She remembers a key fact. Austin, the guild leader, was the secret benefactor behind the Jacador crown prince's ascent to the throne. A voice nearby mentions Princess Rosanna's rumored closeness with the crown prince. Turning, she is addressed as Princess Rosanna. The duke, holding shears among the roses, greets her formally. They exchange surprised pleasantries, neither expecting to see the other here. She suggests they dispense with formalities, as is their custom. He agrees with a warm smile, admitting he prefers it that way. She playfully notes his ability to recognize her just from her back. He replies that he would recognize her no matter how she looked. His unexpected comment leaves her momentarily speechless and deep in thought. He asks if she has any interest in flower arranging. He wistfully mentions that his late mother loved this hobby and tended the garden herself. Rosanna remarks on the late Grand Duchess's delicate touch, an unusual trait for a woman of a military house. The Duke sighs that he did not inherit her talent, then clumsily breaks a flower stem, proving his point. Both Rosanna and the shopkeeper cringe at his destructive technique. He realizes with mild embarrassment that the fault lies not with the scissors, but with him. Rosanna presents him with the damaged rose, complimenting its rare size. He pins the flower to his vest, where it looks quite small against him. Rosanna turns to the shopkeeper and orders 3 bouquets to be prepared as gifts. She announces her departure to the Duke, citing another appointment. He stops her to ask if she received his invitation. He is clearly surprised when she tells him she did not. She explains that any letter he sends will fail to reach her. He is confused. He presses for an explanation. She reveals the stark, lonely truth. She has never, not once, received a letter from a man. Meanwhile, at a club, men gossip about Lady Rosanna's arrogance and her father's possessiveness. The Duke inwardly questions if her father is blocking their correspondence, afraid of losing her to him. She challenges him directly, her eyes flashing. Is he afraid of her father? She passionately declares she wants a man bold enough to defy her father's watch. She lays down her terms. If he lacks the courage for such an act, she will take back the flower he holds. She clenches her fist, wondering if she has once again misjudged the man before her. He addresses her formally, inviting her to speak her mind. He proclaims that he fears no one but the emperor, which only fuels her frustration. But he is not finished. He states with finality that even the emperor cannot interfere in matters between him and his future duchess. Adele's high hopes for this union suddenly make perfect sense. Austen reports to the Duke, relaying a message from Lincoln. The Duke muses on the old guild master's health, and Austen jokes about his impending retirement. Austen smugly declares that he will soon inherit it all. He tells the Duke about his encounter with the noble lady, impressed by her perceptiveness. The Duke's interest is piqued. He asks if she made a request. Austen slyly dodges the question, citing client confidentiality. The Duke attempts to assert authority, but Austen reminds him he is no longer part of the guild. The Duke's sharp tone is met with an equally sharp retort from Austen. A panicked employee bursts in, announcing the arrival of a major problem. Austen dismisses the man, but the employee insists, dragging him off to deal with the crisis. Lady Rosanna's arrival causes a stir, with nobles murmuring that it is their first time seeing her in person. She coolly remarks that their staring might make her embarrassed. She hands off her outer garments to the tailor, expressing full confidence in their abilities. As she is led to the VIP room, another guest watches her with keen interest. She is aware she is being watched. Count Adele Evans introduces himself with a bow. She greets the Count, immediately placing him as one of Flint Howard's associates. He politely requests a moment of her time. He opens with a well-worn compliment. He praises her elegance, and she accepts with a placid smile. He jests that she must have spent her entire life practicing etiquette. She laughs it off, admitting there is some truth to his words. She mentions that her own sibling has said the same. The Count reveals the phrase was first uttered by his lord, the Duke, startling Rosanna. He finds the entire situation fascinating. He gushes about how the notoriously aloof Duke shocked everyone by commenting on a lady's grace. He hastily adds that no one should misunderstand his lord's intentions. She silently ponders what the Duke could have possibly meant. She turns the question back on him, asking for his own first-hand impression of her. He admits she is nothing like the rumors, concluding that high society is a poor judge of character. He sees past her delicate appearance to a core of strength, one suited for the harsh north. He then blurts out a desperate plea for her to marry his highness. He launches into a passionate speech about the Duke's virtues, his fiery heart, his sense of responsibility, and his legendary strength. He even praises the Duke's physique before mentioning his purity, which throws Rosanna for a loop. She tries to cut in, explaining she has only met the Duke a few times. The Count is stunned to learn they've met on multiple occasions. He declares it must be fate, while Rosanna desperately tries to get him to listen. She firmly states that there is nothing between her and the Duke, and asks him to stop the embarrassing talk. The Count's face falls. His Highness. Duke's it fate, His Highness, but she politely suggests a suitable match will eventually appear. The Count's insistence that the marriage must happen immediately catches her attention. She questions the need for such haste. He confirms it's an urgent matter. She speculates it's a move to stabilize the North, but he immediately denies it. The Duke's rule over the North, he insists, is already absolute. His stability is not dependent on a wife. She knows there must be another reason for this desperate rush. He fiercely denies any problem on the Duke's part. The problem, he reveals with explosive frustration, is the Emperor, who is withholding Howard's seal. Now it all makes sense. The Count remembers the Duke's warning and struggles to regain his composure. Utterly defeated, he sighs that she is as unreadable as the Duke, a perfect match. She smiles slightly, not minding the comparison. The meeting concludes, and she admits it was enjoyable. As a last resort, the Count asks if she has even a little interest in His Highness. She pauses, considering her response. If she truly had no interest, she wouldn't have bothered meeting with him at all. She leaves with a promise of less formality next time. The Grand Duchy of Howard began with a seal, a new name, and a title granted by the Emperor. Maximilian Howard was made the Grand Duke of the North, and the seal was an item signifying his new authority. It was a token of the Emperor's recognition, the symbol of the ruler of the North. Rosanna reflects that for Flint, it was also a deeply personal keepsake of his parents. His clumsy attempt at flower arranging was not a hobby, but an act of remembrance. Of course, he would want to retrieve the seal. That was his only memento. This powerful sentiment, she realizes, could be a weakness to exploit. Lavender, her maid, enters her chambers. Rosanna's voice is cold as she addresses the maid, already knowing the purpose of this visit. The maid stammers an excuse about sorting the mail. Rosanna cuts her off, asking if she truly thought her spying would go unnoticed. She reveals she knew Lavender was observing her during her baths, leaving the maid terrified. She lays out the truth. Any contact with a man would have been immediately reported to her father. The maid is frozen with guilt. Lavender collapses, begging for forgiveness. She confesses that she acted on the Duke's orders, out of fear for her own life. Rosanna acknowledges her fear of her father, with cold understanding. She then calls Lavender clever, a word laced with menace. If the maid feared the father, she asks, why did she not also fear the daughter? She posits a chilling question. Did it never occur to Lavender that she might be the more immediate threat? The maid dissolves into tears, swearing she will never do it again. She begs for another chance. Rosanna's policy is firm. She does not reuse people. She dismisses Lavender to await her punishment. She decides against informing her father, knowing he would kill the now useless maid without a second thought. Lavender's pleas for mercy continue. Austen appears in her room that night, seemingly unfazed by her domestic issues. She is not surprised to see him, but she is curious. She questions how he breached her family's security, and he replies with a smug confidence in his own abilities. He confirms he found the earring. He presents a single earring in a box. He explains the details. It's the wrong gem, and the magic is gone, making it a confusing find. He tracked it down through a clue about an old woman named Pamela, a seller of oddities in the back alleys. Rosanna takes the earring, and a strange sense of familiarity washes over her. Even with a different appearance and no function, she knows without a doubt this is her old earring. She praises him for his success. Austen points out that it's still a magical tool, even if its original purpose is gone. He holds it up, examining it. He recounts how his guild's mage was ecstatic, desperate to study a magic tool that emitted no magic. The mage was so eager to dissect it that he offered his entire fortune, which Austen was forced to refuse. The information sparks a new theory for Rosanna. The other earring might be at the magic tower in Kesef. Neither of them likes that possibility. It would complicate matters immensely. She hands him an object as he prepares to leave. It's a pass to ensure he can enter her residence without issue. She provides instructions on how to use it. He inspects the pin and it clicks. He realizes it's a concealed knife. A new scene unfolds, with the Crown Prince cheerfully announcing a bride selection banquet. He declares that Flint Howard will choose a bride, and all eligible ladies are welcome. Rosanna hears the news about Flint Howard. Her face turns to stone. The audacity of inviting her to a bride selection. News of a Jacador delegation sends the royal court into an uproar. The emperor is enraged that their enemies have been allowed on Vianteca soil. He issues a shocking order to Duke Howard, go and cut off their heads. The court descends into chaos. A minister pleads for calm, reminding the king they cannot harm a delegation led by a prince. The emperor furiously remembers Jacador's past assassination attempt on his own son. Prince Heres roars in agreement, accusing the court of selling out their nation to traitors. He volunteers to execute the delegation himself, confusing his father with his bloodlust. The king finally manages to silence his son. A minister advises the young prince on the need for foresight in a ruler. The emperor, having calmed down, agrees to at least hear what the Jacador delegation has to say. He acknowledges that against a common demonic threat, even enemies must join forces. He commands Flint to lead the allied forces against Malkia. Flint accepts the duty. The emperor looks upon Flint with guilt, knowing he is sending him to war yet again. Flint remains stoic. He has no choice but to follow his majesty's will. This endless cycle is exhausting. He sits alone in the dark, weary. It is not war he fears, but the unending nature of his duty. At an embroidery gathering, Viscountess Fleming praises another lady's work. The Viscountess is so impressed, she claims the other's skills might even exceed her own. The lady humbly deflects the compliment, crediting the Viscountess's beautiful designs. Her mind, however, is on the perpetually postponed Howard banquet. The other ladies gossip about the event, speculating that the Grand Duke is finally looking for a wife. Rosanna internally scoffs at the idea. A public bride selection is nothing like the Flint Howard she knows, but her attention is caught by a particularly cute design. She debates asking for it. She confirms that the rumors are true. It is a bride selection banquet. A cold fury settles over her. The Crown Prince explains that there are no special invitations. Any noblewoman of status is welcome. The news reaches Rosanna, and she is livid. Flint Howard, daring to invite her to a bride selection. Is he trying to judge her fitness as a wife? After he himself spoke against treating a spouse like a trophy, she pushes the thought aside. It doesn't matter. She eats a piece of fruit with grim resolve. He will soon realize there is no one better than her. A visitor has arrived. Flint asks Austen if the letter was delivered. Austen confirms the young lady read it immediately. The mission was a success. Flint anxiously asks for her reaction. Austen withholds the information, claiming he can't miss such an entertaining spectacle for himself. Rosanna's response was simple. He's leaving the capital for a while, with no certain return date. Austin is disappointed. That's all. Rosanna coolly confirms it. Austin curses the hopeless northern man for making such a fuss over a simple message. Rosanna's only reply was to confirm she had received it. Flint is taken aback by the curt, emotionless response. Austin suggests he should have taken credit for finding the earrings, at least. That was never an option. He used the guild specifically to remain anonymous. Austin smirks, pointing out that peeking at the contract was hardly the act of an indifferent party. Flint is flustered. Embarrassed, Flint apologizes for his disrespectful behavior. Austin is amused. For the stoic Flint Howard to act this way, he must be genuinely interested in the client. But it seems the feeling is not mutual. He asks what Flint will do now. Flint asks about the letter one more time, but Austin only offers to recite the boring contents again. Flint dismisses the thought with a weary sigh. He dismisses Austin, saying he has kept him too long. He is left to his thoughts, wondering if Duke Rosanna's opposition is the reason for the lack of a real reply. He thinks her father must disapprove of a suitor who could die in battle, but he feels confident he would never leave a wife widowed. He wonders if she shares her father's practical concerns. An aide announces that Count Adele has requested an urgent audience. Sensing something important, Flint rushes to meet him. He arrives to find Adele and a woman sitting together. He asks what happened. Adele and the woman both greet him. 3 hours earlier, the woman had been humming happily while getting dressed. The lady presents a set of jewels, wanting to know if Jane likes them. Jane's delight is absolute and immediate. Jane gushes over her lady's apparent romance with the Grand Duke, seeing it as the best possible outcome. But the lady corrects her, admitting their connection isn't a real relationship. Confused, Jane presses for an explanation. The lady describes their bond as a strategic partnership, a means to achieve mutual goals. Jane fervently disagrees, insisting that discussing marriage and destiny surely constitutes a relationship. She is a true believer in their fated love. To Jane, this secrecy only adds to the romance of it all. The lady, however, seems unconvinced, her silence speaking volumes. A maid reveals a summons from the Duke, catching her lady completely off guard. The maid defiantly announces her refusal to obey the Duke's command. Audacity of her only actions, but desire for her lady to stands firm. She kneels in a plea. Audacity of her only actions, but desire for her lady to stands firm. Experience a little more freedom in her life. The final touch is placed, a shimmering earring. The preparations are now complete. Admires her lady. The remarking on the preparations are now complete. Fascinating way her hair seems to shift in color. The lady concurs, her thoughts fixated on the immense value of the object she now possesses. This earring is a well-kept secret, unknown to both her father and the Duchess. She looks away, lost in thought, pondering the mysterious origins of her possession. At the Adele estate, Jane stands tensely before a man at the door. An unspoken confrontation hangs in the air. He declares his intention to pour the tea, a statement that startles them both. She protests it's improper for a Grand Duke to serve a guest. He dismisses her concerns, insisting on performing the simple task himself. She finds it amusingly strange that he acts the host, forgetting he is a guest in this house too. He turns away, admitting her lack of a reply led him to believe she was uninterested. She clarifies it was merely a flicker of disappointment. His reaction is immediate and alarmed. The thought of letting her down is unbearable. She points out the obvious, his own bride selection banquet. He sputters, vehemently denying any intention of choosing anyone else while she is present. A quiet realization settles in. This earnest, flustered man is the Flint Howard she truly knows. He chides himself for his foolishness, regretting his momentary misunderstanding of her feelings. She begins to speak, her hand outstretched, ready to share a piece of wisdom about the nature of flowers. She compares their brief, beautiful dance to a belief in future growth, a necessary sacrifice for what is to come. With a reassuring smile, she urges him to leave without concern for her. His gaze holds hers, his own faith in her echoing her sentiment. The promise is made, a vow to return without fail. Overcome with emotion, the two maids embrace and cry. One reluctantly pulls away, remembering her duties. A sudden, sharp realization strikes her. The tea she's drinking wasn't prepared properly. Despite the mistake, the tea is surprisingly wonderful. She takes a sip, privately acknowledging its fine taste, as the Duke observes her across the table. The grand hall is filled with nobles for Isabella's debutante ball. Guests murmur in admiration, impressed by the newly debuted Lady Isabella and ever-praised Lady Iliano. The women continue their praise, envying the seemingly perfect bond between the affectionate sisters and the pride their family must feel. A noblewoman dismisses the flattery with a laugh, but her eyes follow the two sisters, a picture of familial grace. The facade drops. Isabella's face contorts with discomfort, the social pressures becoming unbearable. Isabella wants to shrink away from the constant scrutiny. Iliano reminds her that for a Rosanna, being the center of attention is part of the role. Iliano offers a simple solution: stay close. Just then, a gentleman's hand enters the frame, offering support. The hand belongs to their brother, Damien, his presence a quiet constant. Isabella happily runs off to greet him, leaving Iliano to watch with a fond, knowing smile. Her solitude is brief as two familiar faces, Miss Sophia and Miss Violet, approach to greet her. They share a laugh, remarking on the novelty of meeting in a ballroom instead of the solemn temple halls. One admits she found Iliano too intimidating to approach at first. Iliano is simply grateful for their friendship now. The mood shifts as the Jacador delegation is mentioned. A flicker of alarm crosses Iliano's face. Her hand tightens on her dress as she confirms her awareness of the political visitors. Curious, her friends ask for her opinion on this significant political event. The universal desire is for peace with the nation of Jacador. They argue for generosity, citing Sherai's official recognition as a precedent for welcoming others. Iliano remains silent, absorbing their words. Sensing her distraction, they show concern. She quickly deflects, claiming to be merely lost in thought. She realizes her past self was naive about these affairs. Her memories of the future are no longer a reliable guide. She racks her brain, trying to recall the specific events that cemented peace following this historic visit. One memory surfaces with clarity: a man from Jacador at the temple, his golden hair shining like the sun. She recalls another crucial detail: Grand Duke Howard's triumphant return from a major war preceded any marriage negotiations. The name finally comes to her, a whisper from the past: Valdemar. The full title clicks into place, sending a shock through her. The man was Crown Prince Valdemar of Jacador. History unfolds. A holy war in Malkia, led by the nymphs to eradicate heretics, forged an unlikely alliance between Vianteca and Jacador. Grand Duke Howard led Vianteca's forces into the fray, and commanding the Jacadorian troops was Crown Prince Valdemar. Their combined strategies were brilliant, leading them to a decisive victory in the war. After the war, Valdemar returned to Vianteca alongside the Grand Duke, serving as the head of his nation's delegation. His most significant act of reconciliation was returning the remains of the late Grand Duchess Howard, a gesture of profound peace. The memory is so overwhelming that she drops her glass, the sound of it shattering echoing her inner turmoil. The pieces connect with horrifying clarity. Flint's great military triumph was the bloody Malkia Holy War. Her friends, alarmed by her state, hurry to her side with worried questions. Overwhelmed, she pushes past them, stammering an apology as she makes a desperate retreat. The truth hits her. He wasn't on a simple inspection, he was on his way to fight in the Holy War. His secrecy now makes perfect, painful sense. He was bound by duty and classified information. Panic sets in as she flees down the corridor. The timeline is wrong, her memories have failed her, and events are unfolding far too soon. Her attendants are surprised by her abrupt and early departure from the party. She gives a frantic order, her voice tight with urgency. They must go to the temple immediately. In the solitude of the carriage, she finds her resolve. To avert the tragedies of her past, she must be proactive. A fierce determination burns within her. She will do whatever it takes to change her fate. The first day of the banquet begins, setting the stage for Grand Duke Howard. His Grace, the Grand Duke, makes his entrance, his presence commanding the room. As greetings are exchanged, his eyes scan the crowd, searching for a specific person. He finally turns his attention to Duke Rosanna, acknowledging him with a nod. Duke Rosanna formally presents his children, Damien and Isabella, to the Grand Duke. After a clipped pleasantry, his focus shifts immediately. He asks for Iliano. He presses the question of her absence. Isabella silently confirms her sister is not here. Sensing the Grand Duke's concern, Damien inquires. Isabella delivers the news. Her sister is gravely ill. She elaborates, stating Iliano's illness is so severe she likely won't attend the banquet at all. The second day finds the Grand Duke secluded in his study, ignoring pleas to join the festivities. By the third day, the party continues, but the guest of honor remains conspicuously absent. The eligible ladies are outraged. A bride selection event is meaningless without the prospective groom. Their frustration boils over into a direct appeal to the crown prince, demanding he force the Grand Duke to attend. The Crown Prince, now on a mission, ignores all protocol, declaring his purpose too urgent for pleasantries. He throws the doors open, his dramatic entrance shattering the quiet of the study. He unleashes his frustration, questioning how the Duke's absence reflects on his own reputation as the host. As the prince rants, the Duke seizes his wrist, a grim look on his face. The timing, he says, is perfect. The prince is completely bewildered by this unexpected turn of events. The Grand Duke's expression is deadly serious. He has an important request for his friend. On the evening of the second day, a maid calls out, seeking her lady. Jane informs her that the siblings, Demian and Isabella, have left the residence. Iliano, concealed under a cloak, seeks assurance that the house is empty. Her maid confirms the coast is clear. As they navigate a hidden corridor, Iliano and her companion ponder if such secret passages are common in noble estates. Her companion reveals a crucial piece of information. The Risana estate itself has a secret exit, a secret passage. She deduces it must have been constructed for emergency escapes. Her companion confirms that this route will allow them to bypass the knights stationed outside. They emerge from the passage to find their transportation waiting, just as planned. She gives Jane her final instructions. Return to her room and guard it, letting no one inside. The Grand Duke mulls over the report of Iliano's severe illness, thinking perhaps he should visit her. An attendant announces an unexpected guest. Intrigued, he grants them entry. To his astonishment, the visitor is none other than Miss Iliano herself, shedding her disguise. She offers a simple, charming reason for her visit. She wanted to watch the stars with him. She apologizes for her forwardness, but he quickly assures her that her presence is anything but an imposition. Flustered by her sudden visit, he scrambles to clear a space for her amidst the mountains of paperwork. He glances at the stacks of documents, then back at her, his primary concern being her well-being. He confesses his worry over her reported illness. She reassures him that she has, thanks to his concern, completely recovered. He fusses over her comfort, suggesting a better room. She insists she's perfectly content right where she is. She gently points out a flaw in her own plan. His study lacks a terrace for stargazing. He hesitantly informs her that there is, in fact, a terrace in the adjacent room. Her suggestion to move to the other room seems to make him nervous, but he can't refuse. She turns with an inviting smile, beckoning him to follow her. The view of the star-filled sky is breathtaking. He admits he also enjoys the view from the spot. She closes her eyes, enjoying the moment and noting that the garden retains its beauty even in darkness. Reaching toward the sky, she poses a whimsical question, asking if he's ever longed to touch a star. Her desire for the evening is simple, yet profound. She turns to him, her voice soft, and makes a poetic, intimate proposal. He is taken aback, not quite understanding the meaning behind her beautiful words. Her intention is finally laid bare, a direct and unambiguous request. The mood has shifted. He pauses, sensing her hesitation, and asks what's troubling her. She stops him, her words a sharp rebuke. She questions his intentions, demanding to know if this is all it is to him. He withdraws, his expression somber. He cannot engage in an act devoid of genuine emotion. Her practical, if naive, solution is for him to simply develop feelings. He tries to explain it's not that simple. He cuts to the heart of the matter, asking the question that hangs between them. She counters with a condition of her own, making her affection a key to unlock his. She reaches for him, making her choice. She will give him the words he needs to hear. Looking directly at him, she makes her declaration of love. He turns away from her, his words a gentle but firm rejection. His offer to take her home is met with a desperate refusal. The truth spills out in a torrent of desperation. Returning home means being sold into a marriage with Jacador. He stands frozen, the phrase sold off echoing in the silent room. He needs to understand the meaning behind her desperate outburst. She reveals the political machinations at play. A marriage alliance is imminent, and she is the intended sacrifice. He cannot fathom why she would be chosen. The answer is simple and brutal. It is her father's will. Tears fall as she contemplates her tragic circumstances, cornered into this desperate gamble. He processes her words, his mind racing to the only logical conclusion and its staggering implications. He begins to list the hardships of his domain, but she dismisses them without a second thought. He paints a grim picture of life in the north, a land of monsters and constant warfare. She remains unshaken. He warns her that marriage to him is not an escape from politics, but an entry into a different arena. She is prepared to endure it. She finally understands his prior hesitation. Seeing her resolve, he concedes. His decision is made. With a firm, steady gaze, he agrees to her proposal. His first concern, even now, is for her well-being. She asserts her self-preservation is what led her here. Her intensity makes him worry he has misspoken. Overwhelmed and embarrassed, he turns away, clumsily offering her a cover. She smiles at his reaction, gently teasing that this is only the beginning. She brings up the practical matter of producing an heir, much to his utter shock and embarrassment. He throws up a hand, completely flustered and begging her to slow down. He can't keep up with her boldness. He recovers enough to make a plan, but she immediately interjects. She reveals that a formal proposal is unnecessary. She has come prepared. He unrolls the document and is stunned to see an official marriage registration form from the temple. He is bewildered by how she obtained such a thing. She simply credits her long-standing piety. On the journey back, her companion has important news to share. She learns that her brother, Damien, used the very same secret passage they did. Though his visit was brief, the companion felt it was crucial information for her to have. This revelation raises a disturbing question. If only her father knew of the passage, why would Damien, the heir, use it? Her thoughts are shattered by a frantic maid, bursting in with a summons from the Duke. Jane is overcome with fear, her tears flowing as she asks her lady for guidance. Iliano maintains her composure, her main relief being that Jane is safe from their father's wrath. With quiet resolve, she sets down her teacup and entrusts Jane with a critical task. The plan must be accelerated. She gives Jane a hairpin as proof for Billy, setting her escape in motion. Her resolve is absolute. She must flee this house immediately. Her father's impatient voice calls out, a sinister prelude to the confrontation to come. He welcomes her with a smile that doesn't reach his eyes, his cheerful demeanor failing to mask the underlying threat. Her mind races, dismissing the possibility that she was caught. It must be something else. Her fate is announced with chilling finality. She is to be sent to the palace at once. The scene shifts to the throne room, where the emperor conveys the marriage proposal from Jacador to an attentive Duke Rossana. The terms are laid out, an exchange of daughters to seal the alliance between the two powerful nations. The emperor offers a hollow compliment, noting that the fame of the duke's daughter has reached even foreign lands. The emperor puts the question to him, awaiting his decision on this momentous offer. The deal is sweetened with a tantalizing offer, the return of the family's long-lost gemstone mines. This changes everything. Gemstone mines. The words echo in his mind, a prize beyond his wildest dreams. Her father delivers her sentence with a triumphant, greedy smile. Her future has been sold. The swiftness of it all leaves her reeling. Her fate has been decided without her, suddenly and irrevocably. A new panic arises. If she is taken to the palace now, her carefully laid escape plan with Austin will be impossible. Everything is at risk. With her escape plan on the verge of collapse, she finds her voice and refuses her father's command. Bolstered by a desperate courage, she stands defiant and declares that she will not be sent to Jacador. Her father is taken aback, his smile vanishing. He cannot believe she would dare to defy him. His disbelief turns to cold fury. He hisses her name, accusing her of open defiance. She makes a final, desperate plea for his compassion, appealing to any fatherly love he might possess. He scoffs at her plea, his voice dripping with contempt. Her wishes are irrelevant. He will force her if necessary. The horrifying realization dawns on her. He is fully prepared to drag her back into the nightmare she barely escaped. Her fear hardens into resolve. She will not allow herself to be sent away. She plays her final card, revealing her alliance with Duke Howard. She declares herself off the market, hoping this will be enough to thwart his plans. She turns to leave, intent on seeking refuge with the Duke, but is stopped. At the Howard estate, Oliver informs the Duke of a commotion outside involving a maid from the Rossana household. He explains that the maid is creating a scene, refusing to leave without speaking to the Duke directly. Jane, desperate and on her knees, pleads with the guards for an audience with the Duke. The Duke emerges, and Jane's cries become more focused, directed now at him. Even as she's being restrained, she shouts her desperate plea for him to save Eliano. Her final, horrifying accusation, that Duke Rossana is trying to kill his own daughter, stops him cold. Tears stream down Jane's face, her fear for her lady's life absolute and consuming. His expression is grim, his voice low and dangerous. He needs to know everything. The Rossana estate is on lockdown, with guards refusing entry to any and all visitors. A knight announces the arrival of Duke Howard himself, his authority overriding the guards' orders. The guards are stunned into silence. The arrival of Duke Howard is an unforeseen and alarming development. Within the mansion, Duke Rossana's rage boils over, and he raises a whip to strike. He roars with fury, his greed and ambition thwarted by his daughter's defiance. The whip connects, and he rants about his lost inheritance, the true price of his daughter's freedom. His daughter lies unconscious on the floor. Unmoved, he simply orders her to be revived so the punishment can continue. Isabella, horrified, rushes forward, pleading with her father to show mercy. She throws herself at his feet, begging to take the blame and the punishment for her sister. His rage is now directed at his other daughter, ordering her out of his way. Isabella's fear gives way to righteous anger. She accuses him of monstrous cruelty, challenging his very claim to fatherhood. He is incensed by this second act of defiance, throwing her upbringing in her face. Tears of terror and helplessness stream down Isabella's face as she faces her father's wrath. Staff move to restrain Isabella, pulling her away from her father's fury. Convinced Iliano is the source of this rebellion, he turns back to her unconscious form, whip raised once more. His arm is stayed by the sudden, shocking arrival of Duke Howard and his entourage. He stares in disbelief, struggling to reconcile the elegant lady he knows with the bruised figure on the floor. Duke Rossana, caught in the act, bellows at the intruders, demanding to know why they have trespassed in his home. He calls for his own knights, attempting to expel the unwelcome guests by force. As Howard gently lifts Iliano's unconscious body, Duke Rossana seethes, declaring this an unforgivable intrusion into his family affairs. Howard's voice is laced with ice. He notes the cruel irony of the Duke's reputation as a doting father. The knight rushes to Iliano's side, his concern a stark contrast to her father's impotent rage. Duke Rossana attempts to justify his actions, claiming it is nothing more than parental discipline. The visiting knight explodes in anger, declaring that such brutality isn't discipline in any civilized nation. Duke Rossana frantically calls for his guards again, but his butler struggles to respond. The household knights are engaged, locked in combat with Duke Howard's mysterious, purple-cloaked retinue. Howard's eyes blaze with a terrifying light. He issues a final, chilling warning. Iliano is now under his protection. Duke Rossana splutters, trying to assert his parental authority, his rage making him incoherent. The irony is lost on him, as he accuses Howard of the very thing he himself was planning to do. Stirring in his arms, Iliano's first thought is to prevent further bloodshed, pleading for her father's life. The Duke can only stare, trembling, as the power dynamic in the room shifts completely against him. Howard closes the distance, his presence utterly menacing. He repeats his vow, his voice a low growl that promises retribution. The Duke claws at his own face in terror. He makes it clear there will be no second chances, before turning his back on the broken man and carrying Iliano away. One of his retainers reports that their path is secure. The masked man explains their presence, clarifying they are acting on Iliano's own request, as honored by their master. Damien appears, stepping forward to challenge the Grand Duke, his tone dismissive and cold. He arrogantly blocks their path, demanding the Grand Duke yield to him, the young Duke Rossana. He delivers the shocking revelation, hoping to delegitimize her and Howard's claim. She is illegitimate. Howard sees through the ploy, realizing Damien is using her status to justify the abuse. He declares him just as vile as his father. Damien turns the accusation back on Howard, citing the brutal reputation of Howard's homeland when it comes to illegitimate children. He questions Howard's sincerity, sneering at the idea of an illegitimate child becoming the Grand Duchess. Howard delivers a checkmate. Her status is no longer in question, she is already his wife. He presents an object to Damien as undeniable proof. Damien recognizes the object with a jolt of shock. It is the Elasum, a treasure of immense significance. Damien offers a final, sharp warning. See this through, or saving her will have been a greater cruelty. Howard coolly rejects his unsolicited advice, making it clear that he is in control. He makes a final declaration, severing all ties and authority the Rossana family has over Iliano. In her mind, she reflects on the source of her lifelong terror. It was never a monster or an enemy, but her own father. The memory of his whip was a fear more visceral and immediate than any other threat she had ever faced. Seeing him broken and defeated on the floor, she has a jarring realization. Was this terrifying man always so weak? The image of her cowering father is pathetic. The monster that haunted her life was, in the end, just a pitiful, insignificant man. Held securely, she hears his final words severing her from her past. He will handle everything now. As he carries her away, a thought emerges through the pain. If salvation exists, surely this is it. Jane's frantic cries of relief fill the room as her lady's eyes flutter open. Before Jane can rush to fetch the Duke, Iliano weakly grabs her arm, stopping her. She is urged to see his grace, but her heart is heavy with sorrow. The very thought seems to bring her pain, and she can't bring herself to look up. The news spreads like wildfire. Lady Rosanna visited the Grand Duke's estate. Such an unprecedented visit from a noble lady of her stature is met with utter shock and disbelief. His attendants are in an uproar, demanding he not let the lady go. Their minds are already made up. They have decided she will be their new Grand Duchess. He is pressed to act like a gentleman and take responsibility for her. An eager advisor even volunteers to write the proposal letter, recalling a youthful talent for such things. Their frantic planning is brought to a halt. As they are told to calm down, a more rational mind points out they are ignoring a major issue in their fervor. A voice of reason interjects with a serious concern. Would Duke Rosanna, known for his deep affection for his daughter, ever agree to let her go? The frantic energy dissipates as they consider the point. They all agree it is a perfectly reasonable concern, a major complication to their plan. His aide simply confirms what they all know. Duke Rosanna is famous for cherishing the young lady. The Grand Duke remains silent, lost in his own thoughts. He finally speaks, his resolve firm and absolute. She is already the Grand Duchess, he declares, and her father's opinion on the matter is not required. His gaze is sharp and commanding as he silences them. She is residing in this very estate, he reveals, and their loud voices must not disturb her. As his grace turns and walks away, his aide reaches out, utterly flustered. He cannot simply leave after making such a declaration. The aide is left in a state of utter shock. He cannot process the absurdity of what his grace just said. His mind races, trying to piece together the implications. To dismiss a duke's opinion and call her the Grand Duchess without a wedding is pure madness. The terrible realization finally dawns on him, sending him into a panic. He breaks down, horrified by the thought that his grace might have actually kidnapped Lady Rosanna. A fierce woman in uniform bellows for silence, cutting through the chaos. The Grand Duchess, she insists, is in need of mental and emotional rest. The phrase mental and emotional rest strikes the advisors with a new wave of dread. Their expressions are a mixture of shock and growing horror. The terrifying thought solidifies in their minds. Could it really have been a kidnapping? He addresses a maid, his voice tinged with anticipation. He has received word that the lady has awakened. The maid looks nervous as she delivers the news. The lady has fallen asleep again, and she timidly suggests his grace might return later. He immediately understands the unspoken message, his face falling with disappointment. She does not want to see him. Overcome with fear, the maid bows deeply and begs for his forgiveness. She didn't mean to displease him. He glances toward her room, his voice soft with longing. He only wanted to see that she was awake with his own eyes. Rosanna lies in the darkness, tormented by unspoken thoughts. There are so many things she wishes to say, but the words are trapped inside her. He offers to return later if she finds this too difficult. Then, a softer question follows. Is she disappointed? Is he disappointed? She wonders. To learn that the noble lady he held in such high regard was not so nobly raised after all. She believes she is nothing more than her father's possession, a valuable object to be controlled. The grace that everyone so admires in her was not her own. It was a persona, meticulously crafted by her father. He steps over the threshold, as she admits the truth of his earlier observation. Her life was spent perfecting etiquette, because it was the only way she knew to avoid being hurt. Hearing her confession, he offers not pity but profound understanding. It must have been very hard for her. He gently asks her to stop recounting her painful past. He cannot bear for her to dwell on such things any longer. He looks at her with gentle determination, making a vow. From this day forward, the Rosanna Duke family will never lay a hand on her again. The promise hangs in the air, and she looks up at him, tears welling in her eyes at the impossible hope. In a council room, a hand slams onto a document. An outraged voice declares the marriage contract to be a lie. Duke Rosanna furiously accuses Flint Howard of being nothing more than a kidnapper who abducted his daughter. He struggles against those holding him back, insisting that Flint threatened his daughter to force her to sign the contract. Flint listens to the accusations with a cold, logical gaze. The timeline doesn't make sense, he retorts. He calmly instructs them to look at the date on the contract. It is clearly earlier than the day the Duke claims his daughter was taken. The Duke sputters, caught off guard. He immediately accuses Flint of forging the date in anticipation of this very argument. An official questions the baselessness of the Duke's claims. Wouldn't it be better for everyone to simply acknowledge the marriage at this point? His opponents refuse to yield, arguing that there is no duchess without a registered marriage. They challenge him to prove his claims at the temple. The Duke's allies insist that while a contract may be forged, a registration document is another matter. Flint's party maintains they never intended to forge anything. The offer of a wedding is met with pure outrage. How dare he speak of such nonsense? The Duke digs in his heels, his face a mask of fury. He will never acknowledge the marriage until a registration document is brought forth. He stares at his opponents, a nervous sweat on his brow. Why are they so calm in the face of his demands? The law is absolute. Marriage registration requires both spouses to visit the temple, declare their intent, and receive a priest's seal. Flint stands with absolute confidence. At this very moment, he explains, his knights are guarding the temple, and no one is permitted to enter. A knowing smirk touches his lips, leaving his opponents completely confused. Why would he do that? It is time, a calm voice suggests, for Duke Rosanna to finally accept the situation. The Duke can only stare in disbelief. Just then, a handsome, blonde man makes his entrance, immediately recognized by the shocked crowd. It is the Crown Prince. The Crown Prince slaps a document onto the table with a resounding thud. He holds up the proof for all to see, a triumphant smirk on his face. Here is a proper marriage registration document. That cannot be, the Duke screams in complete denial. The registration has to be a fake. Flint smirks, entirely unconcerned by the accusation. If the Duke does not believe it, he is welcome to inspect it himself. The Duke's men inspect the document, their faces turning to horror. The seal is authentic, and it belongs to none other than the Vice High Priest Pieton. Duke Rosanna stares, utterly defeated. This is unbelievable. The Crown Prince adds with a cheerful grin that the marriage has already been registered with the administration. Heir's Vianteka, the Crown Prince, officially declares Flint Howard and Eliano Rosanna married. He stakes his own name and authority on the legitimacy of this union. He looks down at the broken Duke Rosanna. Is that understood? His gaze is chilling and final. Does the Duke have anything more to say? Duke Rosanna trembles, his world collapsing around him. It is impossible. While her maid, Isabella, packs some of her favorite things, Rosanna thinks of the future. She will buy what she needs in the north, but first, she must write a letter. The maid makes sure to pack some Melanie tea as well, a small comfort for the journey ahead. He finds her in her room and asks what she is doing. She turns to him with a calm smile, greeting His Majesty. She explains that Isabella sent her belongings over. She is packing because she will be leaving for the north very soon. His expression prompts a question. She looks at him curiously and asks why he is asking. He admits his true feelings. He is worried, uncertain if taking her to the north is the right thing to do. He suggests that she could stay in the capital longer if that is her wish. She looks back at him, surprised by the offer. She looks at him, her tone firm and questioning. Is he asking her to abandon her duty as his wife? She meets his gaze with unwavering resolve. She is the lady of the northern province now, Your Majesty. With a radiant smile, she declares her new sense of belonging. The north is now her territory, too. He takes her hand, their decision made. Then let them go together to their territory. A voice calls out to the Vice High Priest within the Grand Temple. She presents herself to the priest, not as a princess, but as the Archduchess. She has come to express her sincere gratitude for what he did that day. She knows that if he had not willingly provided the marriage registration that day, she would have lost her life. The priest looks at her kindly. From the moment he first met Her Highness, he began to explain. He felt a familiar presence. It was warm and comforting. It was a profound connection, a feeling that went beyond words. He smiles, admitting that was not the only reason. Ultimately, it is the temple's duty to help those in hardship. In front of the altar, she closes her eyes and gives a silent prayer. She thanks God for hearing her. She asks for continued guidance and protection on the path that lies ahead. In a moment of quiet reverence, she clasps her hands together. She is grateful that her prayer was answered. Her silent plea continues, hoping for a future blessed with peace and safety. Before the divine presence, she offers her heartfelt thanks. Her faith has been rewarded. She looks toward her new life, praying for continued blessings and watchfulness from above.